Test, 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 test. Okay, just checking levels. Should be getting started in just 1 second. There we go. Okay, looks like we're good to go. Hey, Saria, good to see you. How you doing? How's your week been going so far? I'll be getting started in just a second, just getting organized. Yeah, thanks again for the shout out in the channel the other day. I really appreciate that. Quite a few people have been stopping by. The conversation has been really great, as I'm sure you've seen. But yeah, I guess I was not exactly nervous, but I was, kind of curious in a way to see how people would respond to talking about stuff that was a bit outside the normal power scaling stuff, talking about like representation of like neurodivergence and stuff like that. And yeah, that was a great conversation. I'm glad that you enjoyed it. I'm glad that you got something out of it. So let's see. I'm going to do a little bit of an introduction for people who might just be stopping by the stream. Welcome. Thank you very much for stopping by. We're doing a playthrough of Dark Souls 2 Scholar of the First Sin. Specifically, we're doing a rather leisurely paced playthrough where we're taking our time to examine the game from a game designer's perspective. So my name is John, and I've been working on developing video games for quite some time now. Worked on quite a few projects, and I'd like to discuss Dark Souls 2 being one of my favorite games while trying to identify like what the challenges were that the developers faced when building the game, how I think they approached certain challenges, and then put that all into context in terms of the game's storytelling, music, art direction, lighting, try and look for all of that stuff, and use that to try to evaluate the game as a whole. Part of this is coming from a response to some of the criticism that's been levied against the game, both in terms of some of the classic reviews, if you want to phrase it that way, by folks like Matthew Matosis and Mahler, and then there's been some more recent discourse by folks like Feeble King, who've, had more kind of twists on some of those old concerns, so to speak, about the game. And so I wanted to do a playthrough where I was listening to their feedback, looking to see if I agreed or disagreed, and also just kind of trying to explain from my perspective why the game is as good as it is, and that's due in large part to the connection of all of those different factors kind of working together in concert, namely, level design, art design, stuff like that. So something that we haven't really talked all that much about is the, say, armor design. We did a little bit of it as we were starting off the game, but there's a lot of interesting storytelling that you can get a sense of by just examining the weapons and the armor. Now, obviously, looking at the crests and the heraldry and stuff like that, like checking out the shield that has a knight with a banner on it. Okay, there's some fairly obvious stuff there, but there's some more interesting stuff. And I would encourage anybody who is interested in the game, who's playing through the game, to just take a look at the way that some of the weapons are designed. Notice the little details on them. Like this particular sword has a bunch of sort of nicks and cracks, and has that very interesting like guard that's going in two directions at once. Over there, like the upper part and the lower part pointing in different directions. What was the other one that I was looking at the other day? Yeah, the germ axe and the germ double axe, is it called, or great axe, are particularly interesting in that the germs seem to have been expert craftsmen that nonetheless weren't necessarily, some of them use anvils that are kind of like wrapped around with sticks with chains, and it looks like they kind of weren't necessarily geared up to be warriors themselves, and so they kind of repurposed some of their, tools. It's sort of the opposite of like swords into what is it? Swords into plowshares. It's sort of like the opposite of that, right? Like scraping together weaponry from their previous like tool sets, so to speak. But also, the weapon, while it is like a fearsome kind of instrument of war, also has a very sort of industrial and bulky, and yet like a simplistic but kind of elegant beauty to it in a way. Um, so it's very interesting, and the crest there that's kind of going horizontally along each of the blades kind of looks a bit like their headgear, and to wonder what that little spire at the top is. So not all, but many of the weapons have some sort of storytelling. I mean, the mace is a little bit standard, nothing too exceptional going on there, but especially the weapons that are related in some way to a named character or race or clan or something like that tend to have quite a lot going on. Here's that hammer I was talking about, right? A hammer with the anvil that has the chains wrapped up all around it. Let's read the description real quick. A makeshift weapon created from a blacksmith's anvil, crafted rather shoddily, but each hit landed is certain to inflict serious damage. Let's compare that with this. At first glance, this great axe appears crude, but with further examination, one sees the fine craftsmanship of German blacksmiths. Quite heavy for a human, but swung about with reckless abandon by the germ. So you have to wonder if maybe they started out basically grabbing whatever they had on hand and making these particularly crude, shoddily crafted, like anvil weapons, but then in time started to develop them into something that was a little bit more refined and bespoke for combat, but still retained some of that sort of like brutalist elegance of their previous approach to weapons. And you can notice, of course, that the hilt here is the same hilt as on this axe, but it looks a little bit more refined and stuff like that. So you can see the progression of their story kind of making itself manifest in the weaponry, even in something like a minor detail like the hilt of a weapon. So we're not going to spend like tonight going through all the weapons and armor, although we can. But I did want to take a moment, because we've kind of been skipping over that, to just emphasize how much like storytelling and expressiveness and such there is going on behind the scenes. I think a lot of people who might feel a little bit lost and or confused about the story, the lore, and stuff like that might just not realize how much stuff is kind of hidden in plain sight, so to speak. Catching up on chat a little bit. Saria says, pretty good, just got back from seeing Minecraft again. Oh, awesome. Yeah, you liked it the first time, right? So was it as enjoyable on a second viewing? I hope so. And yes, I think your channel should get more exposure, not just for Naruto, but in general. Yeah, thank you so much. That's really encouraging to hear. I had another comment about the Pain vs. Itachi video, and, you know, I really made it another nice sort of encouraging comment, I mean, earlier today from Blanco, and it was something that I made entirely because I just had thoughts that I just needed to get out, so to speak, and so I was making it in large part just to explore the topic, in large part just to kind of see, like, prove to myself that I could do a thing that I said I was going to do that was difficult and stick to it. But knowing that it's been enjoyable, maybe even helpful for some people, has just made all of the work feel so much more worthwhile. So it really does mean a lot. I'm not trying to like fish for compliments or anything, but just to know that the sentiment is definitely appreciated. Okay. And then Saria says, you come into things so respectfully. I try to. I'm glad that comes across, and have actual depth to your thought beyond looking at things super simply, and it makes people appreciate things more. Good. Okay. That's genuinely really good to hear. Especially since I've been getting a little bit more comfortable with the streams. I've been kind of like letting it out a little bit, some of my frustrations out a little bit more. But yeah, at the end of the day, that's kind of what I hope for. Venting frustrations aside, like, I hope to show at least respect for the topic. And the reality is, like, even I'm doing terribly here, even for folks that I wind up disagreeing with and strongly, and have like a problem with their approach or their tactics or whatever, at the end of the day, like, I spend dozens of hours listening to their content, and so that's gotta mean something, right? It means that I, to some extent, am invested in their work, and so I should show a little bit of respect for that, at least. Like, the whole community would be a little bit more better off if that were the case. Anyway, so we're in Iron Keep at the moment, and tonight, sorry, to kind of recap a little bit what we were talking about last time, this is the area of the game that people tend to have a lot of trouble with in terms of uh, a massive difficulty spike. The general consensus is that people experience a massive difficulty spike, which is proportional to a massive decrease in quality, and this level kind of becomes a wall for a lot of people. And admittedly, last time we kind of played through this, these enemies here were kind of giving me quite a bit of trouble, and I wound up switching up my tactics and getting a new weapon and stuff like that. And even when I made it through, I kind of felt like I was squeaking through. Now, that being said, I wasn't actually using a whole lot of life gems, and I also was specifically not using ranged items or experimenting too much with weapons. Like, I went with my two-handed club, which was still pretty pretty on par with the sort of melee approach that I've been taking. Didn't start slinging spells or anything like that. The idea was, some of the criticisms of the game are coming from people who tend to prefer melee-only builds, and so I was trying to stick to that and see how that went. And I did find the challenge to be pretty overwhelming. And I think if some people feel like it's too imbalanced, if it's too unfair, well, that is okay, and they're allowed to have that opinion, and it's not totally coming from an unfounded place. It does kind of make sense. This whole area is basically a bunch of enemies swarming you. That being said, sorry. That being said, another thing that I didn't do is I didn't go down to the pit in Majula. Now that we've gotten to Earthen Peak, we met a NPC that we talked about last time called Laddersmith Gilligan, and he gives us easy and cheap access to various parts of the pit into Majula, so that we don't even need to buy the cat ring to get down there. And so I could just abandon all of this and go all the way through to the Rotten, and then potentially, based on my soul memory, so you see in the upper right hand corner, that's the number of souls that I've ever encountered as a player, which is 923,000. By the time I got through the gutter and the Rotten and all that, I'd probably have over 1 million souls, which means I can go to Drangleic Castle, which means I don't need to go and fight the old Iron King just yet. Now, I haven't been doing any grinding, I haven't been doing any like bonfire aesthetics or multiplayer. I haven't consumed most of the like soul items that I have in my inventory. So really, I am on track without like any grinding or cheese to be able to just completely leave and go and do all that other shit, and then even go all the way through Castle Drangleic and Amana and everything before coming back here if I want to. And if I came back here 50 levels later, then this would be far more manageable. So I think part of the reason why the wall is happening is because people are getting here with a certain build. They're finding that their build is brittle and doesn't really work in this encounter, and they're not willing or able to go to other places and explore and then come back and then see how they do with a more better, like a versatile, more flexible build. And with that being said, I'm going to proceed to the next area, because the next area also is something of a gauntlet that a lot of people seem to find quite challenging. Catching up on chat. I'm doing terribly here. You're alive, so you play better than me. Oh, I mean, I don't know if you were, if you caught last week's stream, but when I was playing through the initial part, like I was dying over and over again to all of the knights kind of coming in, and I think I wound up dying like 10 or 15 times over the course of a couple hours because some of the enemies stopped respawning. If you're not familiar, this game does have a feature where if you kill a certain enemy in a certain area more than 15 times or 12 times or something, then they stop respawning until you like manually reset the bonfire within bonfire aesthetic. And that has started to happen. So, but that was the other thing I was thinking of, is that like this whole area is like supposed to be this fortified iron fortress, and the idea of there just being an overwhelming number of enemies that you have to gradually wear down through attrition, even if it winds up resulting in your death. I mean, I only spent a couple of hours on it, right? And you could argue that that's a compelling form of gameplay in and of itself, right? Like, you're in an area that's just flooding you with enemies. How are you going to overcome that challenge? Well, by basically being immortal, by just outlasting them. Even if the combat encounter itself is not all that fun, you can still just beat your head against the wall until you overcome it, and some people might actually find that to be more fun than like a mechanically difficult challenge. So I think it's worth taking a moment to just. Oh, hey Kavak, sorry I missed you. How's it going? Thank you for stopping by. Appreciate you stopping by recently. Hope everything's going okay. Have you had a good week? My voice. Have you had a good week? What the fuck is wrong with my voice sometimes? But yeah, I hope you're doing okay. Hmm. Oh, you're Canadian. Well, you're in good company here. I have, let's just say, spent some time in Canada and have family that has also spent some time in Canada. Um, what I don't know if you want to like reveal personal information, but like, what part of Canada are you from? Do you like living in Canada? Or being Canadian? I guess I'm just assuming you live there now. I went recently with a friend to the Quebec Winterfest. And said friend introduced me to, sorry for the mispronunciation, the queue de castor, and that obviously is not exactly a health food, but it was it was definitely like a mainstay of the trip. Um, Definitely a lot of fun. I'm curious if you've ever had those. I fell in love with them pretty quickly. Oh, hey, the Cure, or the Sea Cure. Sorry. Hey, how's it going? Thank you for stopping by. Just playing some Dark Souls 2 tonight. Going through the Iron Keep, and I was going to take a minute and just talk about this little area here before we proceed. Um, yeah, hope you're doing well. Yeah, I have been to a few places. So let's see, Ontario. Okay, gotcha. Yeah, and Canada is enjoyable. I would agree with that. Yeah, the Winterfest was great. There was just like all these ice sculptures that they had lit up at night, and so you can kind of see the different colored lights like shining through the ice, in various shapes, and it was great. Lots of fun music, and I'm not usually into crowds, but the crowds weren't all that crazy. It was just people enjoying a nice winter time outside together. Let's see. The Cure asks, would you like to do a cool build? Yeah, potentially. For this playthrough specifically, I'm kind of restricting myself to a simplish melee build because I just want to make sure that I'm kind of following along with how other people have been playing the game in the critiques that I've watched, but I'm definitely interested. What sorts of builds would you recommend? What do you consider to be kind of a coolly created build? I wanted to take a moment before I get into the full combat situation over here, just to kind of... Oh, audio glitched out there for a second. To kind of explore this room. So this is a little room that is generally kind of skimmed by, but I think it's interesting looking at it because the windows and the sort of the window texturing and the presence of that statuary, like the quote-unquote gargoyles, and then also those particular textures on the wall there of those faces, and the angels holding the rings, all of that, as well as those flat textures by the circular like window type things, all seem to be evoking the air of something like an old library or an archive or a ceremonial spot. And it is kind of funny to see such a almost like refined and elegant set of architecture and motifs and stuff like that being overwhelmed and flooded through with magma. And I don't think this is implemented super well, but you can kind of see how the magma is flowing directly, or is it lava? What's the technically correct term? But anyway, the the magma, I'll just say for now, is flowing through the window, and it looks like the textures of the magma, or like the visual effect of the magma, is actually just clipping through the same window over there. It doesn't look like the window was extruded or broken through and it's like formed a hole in it. It's literally just like phasing through it, which is a little bit unfortunate. I think probably an artist could have come through here and been like, oh, there's an opportunity there for us to give it a higher fidelity pass. This might have just been like a temporary solution that they wound up shipping. But that being said, there's still some interesting things to look at, like why are there angelic figures holding, like one is holding a ring, one is holding a laurel wreath. It seems like maybe there are some angelic figures at the bottom as well. And so there's a lot of things you could look at here and kind of get a sense of the lore. That being said, in Dark Souls 1, there are a bunch of similar textures outside the room for Ornstein and Smo's boss fight, and I was fascinated and curious about what they were, and then I did some digging, and I found out they're literally just JPEGs of statues from a place called the, was it like Galleria di Uffizi or something like that in Italy? They are statues of historical figures. that they just they basically just like purchased an asset pack or something like that, and they dropped them in. Now that doesn't mean that they still don't fit the lore, like having old refined looking men outside of the chamber where Ornstein and Smore are fighting in still kind of fits the setting and all that. But that being said, it's like doesn't mean that they're specific to name characters in the universe, if that makes sense. Catching up on some chat here. No idea if you said it right. I don't speak French. I just like saying bonjour. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, it translates to beaver tails or something like that. It's like a fried dough treat that they had available. I think it's like almost like a fast food chain, but they were doing a special thing for the Winterfest event. Let's see. Yeah, it's a weapon build, a hammer build. Oh, interesting. Yeah, like power stancing hammers. I don't think I have enough strength to do that just as of yet, but I'd definitely be curious about it. The whole area is lava land in the clouds, peak game descent. Yeah, I love this. I know some people are a little bit upset about how the game doesn't seem to telegraph it very well. In other words, when you go from Earth and Peak up here, it kind of seems like immersion breaking, but I'm personally not all that bothered by it, just because I feel like, yes, the transition from Earth and Peak up here via the elevator feels a little bit abrupt and maybe a little bit immersion breaking, but I can personally kind of chalk that up to dream logic and just say that, the whole area itself has a little bit of a like a surreal quality to it, and so the fact that the areas don't connect to each other entirely logically, for me anyway, doesn't really break the immersion. It doesn't ruin the experience. Now, I will say I did have somebody bring up before that it's a bit frustrating that they want to have you kind of fall into Belfry Soul like this and then not be able to get back up, and so to make it feel a little bit more reserved, so they have this gap, then you fall down, and then your character, even though your character like diegetically probably could pretty easily get back up there, they've made it so that you can't physically walk back up, and if you want to return to where you were before, you have to like go back to the bonfire, which seems a little silly. Compare that to the let's see, I think it's just in the servants' quarters, the path to Belfry Luna, where they also managed to separate the two areas similarly with the Pharaoh's Lockstone, right? But they did so in a way that really, was the pursuer going to be down here? They managed to do so in a way that feels much more organic, right? Like, yes, you have to go find this hidden area. Yes, you have to, use the Pharaoh's Lockstone and go across. But then the separate area over here actually feels more separate and distinct, whereas the other one is more like, I don't know how to explain it. It just feels it feels a little artificial, and I think Matthew Matosis, in his review, was talking about how that kind of got to him, and I can say I sort of agree with that. Let's see. It was just an issue with development. That's why the areas are like that. I suppose so. Could you elaborate on that? What do you think the underlying issue was that led to them designing it that way? I was thinking about this a little while ago, and I thought that maybe part of the reason why is that they decided that they wanted to have multiple different biomes that looked and sounded very, very distinct from one another. Whereas Dark Souls 1, yes, the Demon Ruins and the Darkroot Garden and stuff like that are distinct, but everything feels like it's part of the same one country, the same one kingdom, with the exception of, I guess, Izalith having a very different architecture and visual theme to it. But, like Sen's Fortress and the Undead Parish and Anor Londo, they all flow together pretty nice and pretty naturally. Even the like Blighttown and stuff like that, they all feel like they're still relatively part of the same continuous thing. I think in Dark Souls 2, they wanted there to be multiple lands that felt very separate and disparate from one another, and they maybe just didn't do a perfect job of creating like a conceit to explain like why they were close enough for you to travel to. The ironic thing to me is that they did that pretty well with the Bastille, because they just gave you two different paths to get to the Bastille that were not physically connected to it, and so they didn't have to rely on something like an elevator. So personally, I think the problem is not the fact that you go from Earth and Peak to another to Iron Keep. so quickly. I think it's more that just the elevator itself is an illogical mechanism to get there. And if they had literally just put a bonfire warp or something, or another fucking eagle, then I don't think anyone would be complaining about it, right? It's just the way that it was presented. Sounds like there's some fire going off over there. Catching up on chat a little bit. Saadi and Ferdowsi are two famous poets in my country, and the first time my little brother played this game, he mentioned those old men in Anne Orlando look like a portrait of them. Oh, interesting, cool. What poems have they written? Were they, like, what are their, like, famous works? Would I know any of them? I know that Dark Souls has a, like, Miyazaki and Co. have a habit of referencing, like, folklore and children's stories. Like, have you played Dark Souls 3? Do you know the crow that says pickle pea pumperum? Like, apparently that was from a children's story. And there's a lot of things in this game as well that feel very fairy tale, very storybook. Let's see. What's up with people thinking Dark Souls 2 isn't connected to the other games, asks Totally Not Kavak. I don't know. I can only imagine that it's because Dark Souls 2 is not particularly favored by the community, and the story seems to kind of be, the ways in which it's connected are, I guess, looser, and so I hope this doesn't sound like unkind or anything, but I think maybe they don't initially see it, and then they're not particularly motivated to go looking for it, and so it just feels like it stands apart. But no, I mean, like, what's his name's, in addition to just the themes and stuff that are carried over, Vendrick's shield appears in Dark Souls 2, for one, and then there's a couple other things I can't remember off the top of my head, but the most obvious one, obviously, is in the Ring City DLC. Literally, Earthen Peak is there. Like, it just gets pulled in. And so, this is a retcon, I guess, but one of the things that you could say about the proximity between disparate places like Earthen Peak and this area, Caldera, or whatever you would call it, is just that, you know, Dark Souls 3 explains that the fire is pulling disparate places together. Or, I guess, that's oversimplifying it, but you know what I mean, right? Like, the distant and diverse lands are drifting together and converging in, not Lordran, what's it called in, Dark Souls 3? Why am I blanking on that? But yeah, in, Lothric. Yeah. And so I think you could argue that they were trying to set this up here. But yeah, I don't know. It feels to me a little disrespectful, for people to say that. But it could just be an issue of not knowing, and maybe the game is a little too obscure about it or something like that. Let's see. The Sea Cure says, by the way, you can respec, but you have to take it step by step. Trust me, you'll enjoy the hammers. Okay, yeah, I'll try that out. I definitely have one of them. I have the Craftsman's Hammer, I think. And I think I have a Soul Vessel, so something I could play around with. Yeah, thanks for the suggestion. I appreciate that. Interesting that we got Immolation here. Let's, I haven't forgot about the other chat message. I will catch up as well. Yeah, I do have a Soul Vessel. Well, let's take a look at Immolation. Oh, is it this? Yeah, interesting. A pyromancy that creates a coating of flame, allowing the caster to incinerate nearby foes. Needless to say, this is a perilous spell that burns the caster while active. If a person is truly desirous of something, perhaps being set on fire does not seem so bad. So that's interesting. I feel like that ties in quite nicely to the theme of both the Old Iron King and of the, like, lovers between Alkin and Ben. And now we have a little piece of their story. See, that's so cool. That's something that's so cool about this game. We're hinted at the story of, like, overwhelming, all-encompassing, powerful desire, both between, like, two lovers, and then both between them and then also the king, and how that, like, consumes them and or affects them. And then we're given, like, an actual, almost, like, magical representation of their experience that we get to use as a weapon. It's like weaponized desire. It's so cool. That being said, I think I'm probably going to get mobbed here. Yeah. What's the best way to handle this? Well, not like that. Yeah. Okay, well, let's keep going. This is probably pretty risky. Oh, yeah, I'm not... I always miss those fucking, Titanite lizards. Actually, I'm gonna go back to the bonfire and then read a couple of chat messages, and then, I'm gonna go from there. So, let's see. Oh, yeah, Crichton and Gilligan are also in DS3. Actually, I know Gilligan is in the, Profane Capital. Where does Crichton show up? I think, Alva the Wayfarer is there too, right? He's outside of something in the profaned the Erythro prison or whatever it's called. Yeah, let's go here. Okay. Yeah, that's a good point. Totally Nukavok says, I can't remember the exact details, but it was something about them expecting to have more paths or arrangement of the areas were going to be different. Oh, that makes sense, yeah. Might have been like a little bit of reshuffling late in development. The Seeker says, I don't think you know any of their poems, but yeah, Ferdowsi has a book of his own called, Shahnameh? Shahnameh? Is that about right? Which is argued to be the reason for that the language Persian didn't get vanquished in war. Oh, that's so cool. I'd love to learn more about that. That's cool. Okay, should we do the build? I think for this evening, I'm going to keep going with this particular build just because I've kind of want to stick to it for the purposes of the review. If I start power stancing, then I'm going to be moving away from the whatchamacallit, the shield plus weapon approach that I've been trying to do for the sake of the review, or the sake of like having the same experience that other players who have done reviews have had, to see it through their perspective. But it's definitely something I'm open to trying. I have to figure out how to like fit it into the stream. I have been also doing a Dark Souls 2 playthrough with another character, so maybe something I could do is to set that up and then a Dark Souls 2 like vanilla, like base game with another character just on my off time, so to speak. So maybe something I could do is I could get that set up and then we could see how that plays by comparison. Either way, let's see. Is there another hammer that I should be keeping my eyes out for? Because I have the Craftsman hammer, but I don't think I have another one that really matches it. The Morning Star is a hammer. It could potentially work. But yeah, I'll keep my eyes out. I'm going to need some upgrade materials too. I don't think I'm quite equipped for it just yet. I also do really like this. The idea that an enemy can actively modify the terrain. Now, granted, Patches already did that in Dark Souls 1, so it's not the first time something like this has happened. But, you know, it's still quite an interesting inclusion. So this is the sort of thing where, like, I can understand if you have a melee-only build, and also if you have a weapon that is relying on a lot of swinging, like horizontal swings, then you would get here and be like, this sucks, this is so unfair, I'm trying to hit these guys and it's just you know, bouncing off the wall. What does the game want me to do? It's clearly ambushing me or something like that. But, you know, I could have gone back here and jumped over, in which case both of them would have been on the other side. Now, granted, if I didn't have a ranged weapon, then I'd be screwed. I'd have to wait for them to wander back and then try to come up behind them. But this, I think, is like, when people ask the question, how does the game expect you to play, or what does the game want from me? My consistent answer to that question is, I think the game just wants you to look around at your options and figure out, like, what works best for you, right? Like, in people complaining about this area, I very seldom see people actually pull that lever and dunk the knight in the water, which is really cool, right? Like, so it safely teaches you that you can use levers in this area to trigger traps, and the traps can actually help you take enemies off the board, so to speak. But also, you know, some of them have limitations, like, oh, I just stepped on that one over there and that one fell, I better be careful. So I don't know, I feel like the level is giving you multiple options and pathways and tools to handle dealing with things, and then it's just sort of up to you to pay attention. That's a little janky there. The stair AI is always a little weird. I do hear that distortion with the audio. I'm not sure. Sometimes when they die, there's like a little extra burst of loudness. I'm not sure where that's coming from. Um. Oh, Lenegrast, I missed that. Okay, right, I got this one from Steadyham McDuff, and I'll get that one from Lenegrast. Okay, yeah, once I get a couple more upgrade materials, I'll try it out. It could be fun to just try it. So, yeah, I'll do that. Thank you for the suggestion. Probably after the Iron King, as we start to go into the, whatchamacallit, down into the rat domain. I can't think of the name for it. The Grave of Saints. Okay. Saria says, that's how I feel with Tears of the Kingdom. People say it acts like Breath of the Wild didn't happen. Oh, no, but one of the side quests is those events being taught in schools. Oh, that's so cool, yeah. I love it when, like, the legacy of a previous game is kind of made an active part of the world like that. That's really cool. Alva shows up just before the prison and the DLC. Oh, shit, I gotta pay attention. 1 second. Better heal. Yeah, let me deal with this guy, and then... Whoa, that is a lot of lava damage. That was a little silly. Figure he should have switched to a melee weapon there. I like that the lava actually really, really hurts you, though. Unlike Elden Ring, where, you know, it's like... You can literally just, like, stand still in a massive roiling lava flow for a long period of time, and it doesn't like do anything to you. Except you gotta be very careful going through here. But I think that's good, right? It like increases the tension, makes you very careful of your surroundings. Totally not Kavak says, yeah, Alva shows up just before the prison and in the DLC. Crichton is part of an NPC questline. Oh yeah, okay. Oh, that's right, right. Like on the bridge. Yeah. You help a host fighting him in Irithyll on the bridge, and he invades you later in the area. That's true, I almost forgot about that. The Seeker, how much strength for the build you have in mind? Oh yeah, that's a good point. I should look at my strength. It's currently sitting at 25. Seeker, do you know how much off the top of your head I'll need for that to do that build? Still definitely down to try it. Might be nice to shake things up a little bit. I do have a whip available too that I was gonna mess with, but okay. So let's see what happens if I run straight through here to the ladder. I noticed that there is a chest down there, and I'll talk about that in a second as well. So I'm up here. Okay, this feels pretty safe. It's funny, in certain reviews of the game, I saw people running up here and then complaining about it being too dangerous or something. They didn't know what to do once I got up here. Maybe it's because I already dealt with a couple of the samurai. Okay, there's another one. I do actually quite like the way that they blend into the environment, but then also will kind of come rushing at you out of the shadows. I think that suits their design pretty well. If I remember correctly, this is a mimic. Let's just watch it for a second and see if we can tell. Oh, Oliver, I forgot about that guy. Yeah. He's always got like some weird build. Oh yeah, check out his headpiece. It's like a horse. There are knights with that headpiece in the he's fat rolling in Drangleic Castle, if I remember correctly. If I can get into backstab. Whoa, that was cool. Oh, he's got the puzzling sword. So that's interesting, right? Like I think we saw Fencer Sharon with the puzzling stone sword earlier, and now this guy has it. It's interesting. I think it suits him. Like that NPC feels like he could have been another player, right? With like a collector that has a bunch of different odd and quirky items. That feels kind of cool. But given that we've now seen 2 NPCs with the puzzling stone sword, it does start to feel like, I don't know, maybe a little bit that is being a little bit overemphasized or something like that. Let me check that real quick. Oh no, they do not have mimics in Elden Ring. Sorry, as far as I can recall. For some reason, I thought this one was. Yeah, it's the first one. They didn't have. I don't think they had mimics in Bloodborne either. They quote unquote replaced them with, or they have instead of that, they have the traps that teleport you, like transporter traps. I don't think they actually have straight up mimics, which is kind of an interesting choice. I wonder why they decided to do that. Um, I remember seeing a bunch of different concepts that people had put together. I think maybe it was Dark Souls 3 concept art. I forget, but it was essentially like a bunch of different ideas that had been surfaced about. Oh, I do actually have some life gems. A bunch of different ideas that have been surfaced for different ideas for mimics. So, for example, somebody had come up with the idea of a mimic bonfire that would just activate once you got close to it. Like you tried to rest at a bonfire and then it like uncoiled and untransformed itself. That firing AI is a little silly. This is an interesting encounter though, like quite a beautiful setting to come up to, right? You come up from that dark, kind of cramped in set of series of traps and levers and mechanisms and such, and then you get to see like this beautiful vista. That in the background, wow! Like I hadn't quite registered that those buildings that are kind of like embedded in the rock over there in the massive sea of fire. This is such a cool reveal. And then these warriors are initially quite intimidating when you come out here, but you know they'll act as sentries and kind of try and fire at you from afar. Giving you the chance to walk up to them, but then they do have kind of imposing melee attacks once you get close. So, I don't know, I feel like their AI makes them feel a little bit janky, like why are they just standing there, why are they firing in front of themselves when I'm off to their side? So, limitations of the engine, but I do like the way that this encounter is designed. I do like that it gives you a second to kind of survey the area if you're careful, but if you're not paying attention, then you can potentially get stuck. You do have a way out if you decide that you just want to run away from the encounter, but you still have to be careful about the way that you escape because you have these sort of platforms over here, which again, to be very careful about how you go down. And yeah, if you are, then you're rewarded with an alternate pathway and extra loot, I believe, yes. But still, it keeps the tension very even throughout the entire thing, which is pretty difficult to do. Oh yeah, sorry. Mimic bonfire would be awesome. See if I can find that concept art. There's a bunch of ideas that were really interesting. It might have been in one of Vati's videos a while ago, where he kind of showed a few of them off. But yeah, I wish they had done something similar. Okay, so yeah. So now we're back down. We got a little. I think that's pretty brilliant, right? We get a little glimpse of what's to come in the like sea of fire beyond, but now we're in this area, which is sort of pulled back down into the keep, like the gravity of the keep, so to speak, is bringing us back down. And I don't have much to say about the lore. I'm not exactly sure what is going on here, apart from just like maybe trying to draw iron out of the ground. But we get like a preview of what we'll wind up seeing in the Old Iron King DLC, which is great. And there is something oddly terrifying about the mixture of these mechanisms and the lava below, and like the darkness punctuated by the like harsh glow of the lava. I guess it reminds me of like the second Indiana Jones movie, that scene where the characters are put in that cage and lowered down to the lava. So it feels very very fantasy for sure, but also like kind of grounded in a sort of darkness that I find compelling. Never a big fan of the platforming in these games, and I can understand why somebody would get very frustrated with this, but if you're careful, it feels like you've almost I love moments in games where you feel like you've discovered a path or a way of navigating that maybe wasn't entirely intentional. It like makes you feel like you've kind of broken the game without cheating, just because you're like so proficient or something like that. When games basically trick you into feeling like you're a genius, I think that is in and of itself pretty damn clever. And so now, granted that was all pretty challenging, I had to be pretty careful, but care and attention rewarded us with an alternate path that was both thematically, visually, and mechanically rewarding. So I feel like it was a good thing overall. And we could go back, I think, right, and explore this. Be careful though. Oh, well. Okay, just gotta be careful about that. Am I talking about the fan art by Vemprick? Potentially, yeah. He made a bunch of Dark Souls art. I couldn't remember if it was fan art or if it was concept art. That was, from, like, one of the art books or something like that. It was more of a sketch it was like a professional sketch. It was well done overall, well designed and all that. But it wasn't like a render from the game or anything to that extent. So I think I'm not gonna go back there. But also, it's worth noticing, I think, that the theme of a bull is something that is obviously very prevalent throughout this level. There are these bulls that spurt fire. Those bull idols over there. There are the faces of bulls on those water jugs, and I will talk about the water stuff in a second, because there is actually I can talk about this now before, like, as we're proceeding to the next area. But so you might have noticed that there's, not in here, but there's a couple of treasure chests and pathways that are on fire, like just sitting on top of the lava, and of course, if you run onto them, you'll take a lot of damage very quickly, and so you don't want to walk on them, right? But one second. You don't want to walk on them because you're going to take so close. I get really, really tense about potentially falling off the ledges. So you don't want to walk on the lava because it will burn you. However, you want to get those items. And how do you do that? Well, there's a hidden mechanic. I'm not sure if it has a name. Wetness, I guess I'll just call it. Which is that if your player has been recently soaked in water, you gain quite a lot of fire resistance. So part of the reason why there are a lot of water pots around, and why there are those Pharaoh's Lockstone contraptions that all they do is they activate a pool of water, is that you can cover your character in water, and then if you run through the fire, including these fires over here, but also including the fires. 1 second. I think I can get this. Okay, yeah. But also including the fires that you can walk on, like the fiery texture or whatever. It gives you a lot of fire resistance. Now, usually it's not enough. Usually you also have to use a flash sweat and some fire resistant armor and stuff like that, and like a fire resistance there's the orange burr that will give you additional fire defense. But the idea is, right, like, you're supposed to use all of the fire resistant tools you have in the environment, including your own tools as well as those that are placed as breakables or consumables or whatever, and combine them together and then give yourself essentially fire immunity for a short period of time. You can supplement that with life gems as well. It's kind of similar to the whatchamacallit, the Master Sword in Breath of the Wild. If I'm remembering correctly, Saria, you can definitely correct me here. You have to get your character to have enough hearts to be able to pull the sword out of the stone, because as you're doing so, it drains your stamina, and it's a way of making sure that you have enough health to be able to enter that phase of the game, right? Something like that. So it's a similar thing here. It's like the game gives you a nearly impossible fire damage check, but then it gives you little hints, little clues, and little ideas as to how you might be able to overcome that. I can't remember if the rewards are actually worth it at the end of the day, but it's still quite an interesting little mechanic. Oh, okay, sorry, I'm catching up a little bit here. Saria says Miyazaki secretly wants to make a Mario-esque Soulsborne game. Yeah, I feel like this is a Bowser dungeon or keep or something, right? And only through platforming segments is he keeping that game contained and away from human hands. Yep. That and his endless quest to make some sort of a Berserk game unofficially. Vemprick made art of bonfire, barrel, bloodstained lettering, and of course, okay, yeah, that must be the one that I'm thinking of. Then, yep. Thank you. I'm impressed that you just knew that name right off the top of your head. That's great. Yeah, I'll have to look that up because that was some amazing art, and I remember, yeah, it was definitely Vati in one of his videos that was showing it off and talking about how cool the designs were. And that's great. 300 fire resistance specifically. So you get 300 resistance if you roll around in the water. That's cool. How much do I have now? Fire bonus, oh wow, okay, so that's a massive bonus for sure. I wonder how much I get if I eat one of these. Probably shouldn't waste it, but whatever. So the orange burr brings me up by 10. So wow, that's huge. Okay. If it's going up 300 and an orange burr only gives me 10, then that's crazy in a good way. But yeah, so I think it's quite satisfying that now that we've navigated through all of those hazards and all those traps, we now have the ability to just turn them off. And it kind of gives us an opportunity to explore the level a bit more at our leisure and appreciate the you know, the way that everything's constructed. Twin bowls over here again. This feels like a very video gamey area, for lack of a better phrase, with the spike traps and the fire and everything. But there's a kind of a joy to that sort of thing, right? Like, I don't know, I quite enjoy it. Even though it's a little bit cheesy, I guess you could say. This trap over here, second, so I think is worth talking about. When you get trapped in here, because, you know, when you come through here, this lever gets, or the little gate closes down and you're stuck in here and you're forced to fight this knight. And I think that some people could potentially find that to be a little frustrating or cheap because you get walled in like that. But I personally find it kind of an interesting trap as part of a gauntlet. You should potentially be, I mean, I don't know, maybe it'll catch you by surprise, maybe there's no way to predict that it'll fall down again, but given where it's placed, like with a lever on either side, I think there's enough of a hint that you should be careful and wary, and you're not going to have much time to then try and raise the lever to kind of go back and kite the other guy out, but it's worth, it's one of those things that I think is a risk, and some people might hate it, but I like it as part of the context of a greater array of puzzles. It's kind of hard for me to imagine what exactly the purpose of this room is diegetically. Like, why did the old Iron King make this space exactly? But there was one other thing I wanted to say here, I think. Oh, yeah. Interesting to note that, of course, the knights over here are... their armor is like cleaner and I think more refined. Maybe it's like a slightly different model as well. It just feels a bit more advanced compared to the ones that we see in the Forest of Fallen Giants, which seems to me to indicate that these knights were manufactured, or their armor was manufactured more recently, or they were kept in better condition, as opposed to those who were maybe sent out to the Forest of Fallen Giants are older, more withered, or they've seen more battle, or maybe have just sort of gone to disrepair over the years. It is kind of funny, I never noticed that before, that right at the back of the knee joint, there is a tiny bit of cloth exposed, it looks like right above the boot. There's just a little bit of cloth showing through, which is really interesting. I always thought that they were like fully, completely armored, but there's like, it's almost like an Achilles heel type thing. There's one little spot that's a bit more vulnerable than the rest of their body. Really, really cool armor design, though. I really love those guys visually. Okay. So let's see. Yes, Saria, that's how the Master Sword works. Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I'm glad I remember that. I've only played through Breath of the Wild once. I actually didn't really like it the first time through, but I have come to respect it, especially from a game design standpoint. Which reminds me, are you familiar, Saria, with Joseph Anderson, the games critic? Or like YouTube games critiquer? I don't know what the term is. He did a video on Breath of the Wild where he said... it was called like Breath of the Wild, Not Enough Zelda or something like that. I'd be curious if you have thoughts on it. Oh yeah, so and the set, right? Like I just got ironclad leggings, and you can also get old ironclad leggings, so they actually do have two completely different armor sets. I forgot about that. Totally not Kavak says, I didn't. His art was the first thing to pop up when I searched up Bonfire Mimic. Oh, okay, gotcha. Also, Reddit post blatantly lying, presenting his art as official. Oh, no, that sucks. No. Kavak says, alright, I gotta go sleep. Oh, yeah, no worries. Also, the Ironclad Knights are constructs. They're empty shells. Oh, yeah, good point. I'm impressed by your lore knowledge. I need to kind of bone up. It's been a while since I've delved into some of the finer details. But yeah, I hope you have a great rest of your week and a good weekend. Thank you for stopping by. Thanks for the for sharing the info and everything. Take care. Okay, nice little moment of quiet before the storm, so to speak, with the old Iron King coming up. Yeah, let's read this real quick. Leggings worn by ironclad soldiers provides high defense, but are so heavy that they require great strength to move. The ironclad soldiers were minions created by the old Iron King, their life granted by an enchantment of souls, right? But now this is again an iron husk and fit to wear. I see, so the old Iron King used the power of souls to kind of animate armor to send them forth. Once the old Iron King could have unraveled the greater mysteries with the aid of his great soul, but he was led astray by his enormous fortune, becoming nothing more than a vulgar hedonist. Oh wow, okay. So there's another person who failed to become a monarch, quite clearly. I think I'll try solo at first. Let's see. What does this do exactly? Oh, load. Yeah, I probably need that. And I think, do I have a fire protection ring? I do not. Okay. Well, let's just give this a shot. So this is something that I don't, so one of my favorite lore YouTubers is called Sinclair Lore. I've learned a lot of stuff from them. I've gotten a lot of entertainment from them over the years, and I would suggest if you are interested in the Souls games at all, like, please check them out. They make a lot of really awesome stuff. But despite doing lore series for quite some time, I think one of them at least was unaware of something that I'm about to show off here, which is if you rest at the bonfire, you may have noticed that the bonfire is called Angel's Idol, and it has a little picture of a bull on it. You may be wondering, what the hell is that bull? Who the hell is Angel? And if you turn around and look up, you'll find that terrifying, amazing fucking thing. And I guess like quite a few players will go through the game and just not even realize that it's there, because it really is hidden in plain sight. But it is just such a kind of imposing and surprising reveal, especially since you can kind of see like a glimpse of it. Well, something's grasping that tower over there. What could that possibly be? Oh, that kind of looks like an arm. Huh? That's kind of funny. Oh my god. And then it's right there looming over you. So yeah. And the way that these like spires with old buildings are kind of like woven into the rock. Oh, this whole area is just so beautiful and terrifying and cool. And when people are like, yeah, but this whole area sucks and this is where the quality of the game plummets and never recovers because the nights are hard. I'm like, okay, well, you don't have to like that, but also you might be missing some of the other cool shit that's happening, you know what I mean? Okay, I'm gonna just buff up just a little bit. I feel like an Elden Ring player. Okay, here we go. Probably gonna die. What a cool intro. Okay, let's see. I don't remember how to fight this guy. I know I gotta watch out for the pool back there. Okay. Definitely something where a build with more ranged options would have come in handy. Ooh, that was close. Can I get him? Oh, that was a little much. Okay. Ooh, interesting. He's actually making the same kind of roaring sound that the gaping dragon does. Okay. Doing okay so far. Nice, he's in a little bit of a sentry mode. Now he's repositioning. Oh, cool. Took me by surprise. That's cool. Now he has a mode where he's a little bit more vulnerable. Feels pretty satisfying. So how is this attack gonna go? I like how his sound design feels just a little bit pitiful. I like how he has multiple hitboxes. He hits hard, but it's not unfair. Okay, that was my fault. I healed too close. Missed my opportunity to do some counter damage. Switching between my different types of life gems. I could risk it and get a little close to him. It's risky, but it paid off. Okay, now again. I think I might want to just back off. Okay, so his attacks are damaging. They are threatening, but they're also not too hard to read. And I think they give you ample opportunity to try and find opportunities to punish them. Yep. Not a super mechanically complex boss. He definitely feels threatening, but not... Ah, oh shit. Oh, I was just starting to feel confident. Like, oh yeah, this guy's kind of a pushover, and then, well, I got pushed over. That was fun. That definitely felt like, especially for people who prefer bosses that are a little bit more concept rather than just a whole bunch of tricky mechanical execution, memorizing difficult patterns and stuff like that. They prefer more the theme of the fight. I think that was pretty good. It's a boss that kind of rewards creativity. It kind of encourages you to, you know, not feel like you have to constantly worry about having perfectly executed reflexes so much as just looking at the attacks and the patterns that are presented to you and finding your own way to exploit them. Like, it's not like, you know, the boss has one big glowing red weak point and you have to hit it there because that's its weak point. It's much more like, you know, well, the boss overall is not going to be vulnerable all the time, so you have to find your own way to, you know, understand his positioning, his anatomy, and then figure out how you're going to use that to your advantage, right? Saria says, I typically stay away when I hear this is a good game movie, but it's not an good game movie, but I will hear him out. Oh yeah, no pressure whatsoever, I'm just curious. He kind of starts off by saying Breath of the Wild is one of the best games ever made, and also parts of it feel like they're from one of the worst games ever made or something like that. And so it seems like kind of a quest on his part to try to reconcile those two parts of his experience, if that makes sense, like the two different parts of the experience. And then Saria says it's kind of like, yeah, franchises tend to evolve to stay relevant. Yeah, well, that's... So I'd be curious to hear if you have more thoughts about that, because something I have always really genuinely loved about the Zelda series, which I would say, you know, are some of my favorite games, or typically have been anyway. Okay, this is not going to work. 1 second. I really like the dungeons, and I really like finding weapons that serve also as tools, you know what I mean? Like things that have multiple uses that you sort of discover emergently over the course of the game. And I don't know, I've always really enjoyed that. And then when well, what was it? When Twilight Princess came out, like some friends of mine had said that they found Twilight Princess to be kind of not bad per se, but kind of like the last straw. Bad timing. Okay, that one was my fault. Basically just like Twilight Princess is just doing the same thing that Ocarina did, that Wind Waker was a bit more innovative, but essentially if the series doesn't start innovating, it's basically just become a formula like Metroid or whatever, and there's no point to play it because we've already played this before. And I was like, no, absolutely not. I love this formula. Please make more of this. I would have gone straight from Twilight Princess into purchasing a Twilight Princess 2 that was just like more dungeons, and more items, more weapons, because I really liked it. I didn't feel the need for the series to really do all that much to break out of a mold or whatever. But some people seem to feel that that was not the case, that basically even Skyward Sword wasn't going far enough. They needed something to happen to break it out of its stupor, or for lack of a better phrase. And then Breath of the Wild came out, and a lot of people loved the fact that it did exactly that. And I was like, wait, no, but I want my dungeons back, I don't want to have all of the main suite of items that I need at the beginning. I want to have a whole bunch of different things that get revealed gradually over the course of the game. And so I was just missing, not in Zelda, But, it doesn't mean it was bad or anything. It's just personally disappointing to me. Why am I doing worse with this on every run? That hitbox felt pretty good. Don't always know the best way to position myself. This is another one of those bosses where it's like some people, seem to be confused about whether or not they should have their camera locked on or not the whole time. And this is one of those bosses where I feel like if you keep the camera locked on, you're just gonna get screwed. You have to turn it on sometimes and turn it off at other times. And it just kind of exemplifies to me the whole point that there's never just one way you're supposed to use your camera. It's a tool. You're supposed to use it in whatever way fits the situation. I really don't know who started that meme about the game wants you to play locked off and that's the correct way. Or not locked off, that's a bad way of phrasing it, but that's the term that they use for whatever reason. With the lock on not enabled. One thing I will say is that it's a little difficult to tell what he's going to do because the animation for him, lowering his, raising up and preparing for the next fire attack is very similar every single time. It also kind of feels like if you're not very efficient in preparing for a given attack, you're probably going to be out of stamina and get screwed the next time. So, but I do this does feel like a little bit Mario-esque, right? You have to kind of dodge the individual lobs of fire, which is kind of cool. There we go. Nice to have him generating environmental hazards that you're dodging and ducking and weaving between. That all feels really good. I'm back on the idol there. Very kind of terrifying and imposing. In its own right. But yeah, I feel like that was a pretty fair boss fight. I feel like it was something that rewarded kind of slow and careful consideration. The graphics weren't all that great, but the theming was pretty awesome. Sound effects were cool. I do feel like the giant horned demon thing is something that, considering how well the Soul series handles demons in general, it does feel a little bit... This particular sort of demon feels a little closer to something out of Diablo. It feels a little bit further outside of the established, whatchamacallit, aesthetic of the Souls games. It feels like a demon as opposed to a Souls demon, right? Especially when you compare it with the design of the demons from Dark Souls 1. But I guess it's not really one of those demons, right? It's its own thing. Let's see. Saria says, I'm a part of the crowd that loves both. That's why I like what Aonuma and Fujibayashi are doing, where we'll have classic Zelda, but also open air Zelda. Two groups of teams working on the franchise. Oh yeah, that's a good point. It's nice to feel like there are people in development who like are servicing different parts of the franchise, of the demographic, or different demographics part of the fandom. If that makes sense. I think I know a lot of people are skeptical of Duskbloods and Night Rain, but as long as I get like a single player Souls like every once in a while, like feel free to cater to the multiplayer crowd too. Just more people coming into the community, you know. Sarias then says, I was gonna ask you if you thought his animations were similar, but he's got such a cool design though. Yeah, he does. So this could be a good or a bad thing depending on your perspective, but he does tend to raise his arms up in the exact same way every single time with very subtle differences, so it's tough to tell what he's going to do next. And if you're the sort of person who likes to have a one-to-one relationship between a preview animation or a tell, so to speak, and then what the character does so that you can accurately predict it every single time, then you could find that frustrating. But you could also say, like, okay, well, this boss is specifically teaching you that you need to be preparing for multiple potential enemy attacks, even based on one shared animation. And I really like that idea too. You know, so much of the memorization and dealing with bosses in later parts of the series, or in From Software canon or repertoire, I guess, is just learning to memorize complex movesets and then executing the correct responses, which can be awesome. Like, that's Sekiro in a nutshell, and I fucking love Sekiro. One of my favorite games ever. But also, like, that's not the only kind of boss fight, right? That's not the only way to beat a boss. It's not the only way to design a boss. Yeah. Really quick, this is one of the teleporters that leads you to the DLC, and I think I was always kind of confused as to what the snakes were, like why are there snakes or whatever. I think I understand now. They are silverish in color, and a silver snake in these games represents avarice. Like, we have the covetous silver serpent ring, which increases the amount of souls that we gain, and it specifically says that it depicts the snake, which is both the servant and manifestation of the god of greed. Greed is traditionally viewed as a vice. In Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 3, there's some commentary on how, like, the characters who are consumed by greed wind up... I gotta go look it up. But basically, there's... there's something when you pick up the covetous serpent ring in Dark Souls 3 that it says, like, if you wind up getting consumed by greed, like the members of these particular clans of people, you can get transformed and cursed into a mimic. Like, the idea behind the mimics is that they were people who were part of a certain clan or group of people who in life were very greedy, very avaricious, and as a result, this led to them getting cursed and turned into those chests that then prey on, you know, the greedy travelers who are just rifling through treasure chests. And that sort of sentiment is included in the rings. There's also this common theme of serpents being failed dragons, like people who want to become a dragon, which is kind of used as a symbol of just kind of standing above the world, being separate from time and desire, being almost like a Buddhist, like a bodhisattva almost, like just the dragons are somehow removed and somehow ascended, or like quote unquote more evolved compared to human beings, at least in the way that they're depicted sometimes. And sometimes people try to become dragons for power, for wealth, just because they're fascinated with dragons as a species or whatever. And that's the wrong reason to become a dragon, as I understand it. In order to become a true dragon, you can't really want it because desire is undragon-like. So it's this weird paradox where you have people pursuing greatness through might or through willpower or whatever, but that ultimately leads to their downfall. And so what you have is 3 portals to 3 kingdoms ruled by 3 fallen kings, and then the symbol of them as snakes with their heads severed, with their crowns, you know, removed from them, which I really, really like. Not exactly the most subtle thing in the world. For whatever reason, I guess the metaphor just didn't click with me. But now, coming back to it, I'm like, oh yeah, that's so cool. Water dry and path amiss, wolf of temptation is dismissed. So, obviously not really appropriately leveled for the DLC right now, but I'm just gonna go to activate the bonfire. Let's see. I actually never played Sekiro, so I'm not very knowledgeable, lol, says Asarius. Oh, man, I highly recommend it. It's probably my favorite Souls game. It's definitely one of my favorite games of all time. Especially for people who are interested in Japanese mythology, Shinto, just Japanese history. There's so much of it that is drawn in from those things. It's very difficult for me to articulate just how much I love that game. It definitely has one of the best combat systems in any game I've ever played, like a third-person action combat system specifically. Really just, yeah, I could tell you more about it, but essentially, for me, it's a must-play for FromSoft fans. That being said, it is really hard, and I'm not particularly good at games, so I did struggle with it. In particular, the thing that makes it so hard is that it's not something that you can really grind to get out of, right? Like, if you get stuck, if you're under-leveled, if you can't get your way past a boss, you kind of just have to learn it. Kind of like in Lies of P, if you've played that. There's not a whole lot of options for you to go and get souls and get better because the leveling, get stronger that way because the leveling system is kind of broken. So this is interesting. If I remember correctly, you can put your summon sign down here, and then people can summon you from other places in the level, even if they don't have the DLC, or maybe it's vice versa, right? Like for the frozen tundra, you can, frigid outskirts rather, you can summon people who don't have the DLC to help you, if they come here. And I guess the way that it works is like you get the key that unlocks this thing, that turns this thing on, and then you can come to this little area and put down your summon sign and help people even if you don't have the DLC yet, and it gives you like a little preview of it, something like that. Yeah, I don't actually have the key, which is why it's closed. But love this door too. You can kind of see, looks like Sin the dragon on the top, the Ivory King with his Child of Dark there in the middle, and then, or is Sin on the bottom with the dragon, then what would the one be on the top? I'm not sure. It's such a weird design. The creature on the top with the spikes on its back. What is that supposed to be? Oh. Anyway, and then it looks like almost like zodiac signs in the middle of the calendar there. Super cool. Oh yeah, and you can actually see there's some figures. 1 second. I lack the ability to properly analyze this stuff. I'm always a little jealous of folks who have an eye for this. But still, it's worth taking a look at, I think. Damn it, why? What am I doing? Where is it? Okay, there we go. Okay. Should just get a fucking binoculars. Okay, yeah, so you can kind of see, it looks like there's two figures kind of standing one behind the other, maybe with a knife to his throat or constraining him a little bit. And then there's that character up there who seems to have a robe obscuring their face. There's a sun at the top with a spire. A lot of interesting imagery here. Not prepared to fully diagnose it, or not diagnose it, it's not a disease, but fully like explain all the lore of it, but I will be thinking about it. Thinking about what it means. I'm sure somebody out there has already figured it out like 10 years ago. Anyway. Saria says, I can actually appreciate this whole lore with the Mimic and the dragons now when I couldn't in the past because I've gotten into D&D recently, only like a month ago. Oh, that's awesome. That's cool. Are you currently involved in a campaign? A friend of mine was telling me about his campaign recently. I won't get into the details, but yeah, it's really amusing how many crazy situations you can kind of conjure up. And then the whole process of crafting a campaign is its own art form as far as I'm concerned. Oh, hey, Konakun, welcome. It's good to see you. How you doing? How's everything holding up for you? Konakun says, I love the moment when the Ivory King said, I am Dark Souls 2, the Crown of the Bird Ivory King edition. Yeah. Well, when My favorite fight was against John, Crown of the Ivory King. It was definitely, you know. And then when Aldia, aka John Scholar the Person, fights you in the end and gives you his toasty crown, really kind of brings the whole room together. The room being the game. Hesitation and defeat some old asshole who you throw firecrackers at 12 times in a row before chastising him for jumping out of his son's neck, grandson's neck. If you know, you know. Okay, let's see. I should at some point probably go and like exchange these souls for things that aren't effects. I'm just scared to go down into the into Seldora again. Okay, oh right, reinforce. Do I actually have enough to reinforce this? Yeah, I'll just keep going with my battle axe. I do want to try that other build that was suggested, but I think I'm gonna wait for now because I'm kind of enjoying like sticking to the one simple thing the whole way through. Let's see. Should buy a few more life gems, but let's level up a little bit first.
It is the only choice left to you.
Yeah, not very encouraging. I think I need to. Let's see. Actually, yeah, I could use some more vitality because I'm starting to run low. But I also need to make sure to get life gems. I need to make sure to get those ladders down there. So. I think I was mentioning this last time that the idea of having a NPC that actively works with you to alter the environment in some capacity is a really cool idea as well.
Wait, you found your way out too. The name's Gilligan. Don't make me say it twice. All right, what do you want? I have everything you need.
Okay, so I'm gonna go through this. You don't.
That awful hole. You must have lost your marbles. Fine, sure, fine. I'm happy to be of service. You need a ladder then, sure enough. But you'll have to show some generosity.
Yeah, so you don't.
Don't get it. Fine then.
You don't ever technically have to do this. You can just get the cat ring and be crafty and careful about the way that you go down the hole. But it is sort of an interesting feature, and I wanted to engage with it and see if we get a reasonable reward for each of our investments. I'm the sort of player who...
This ladder's not for sale. The only things I sell
1 second.
are miniatures. I mean, if that tickles your fancy, you can buy as many as you like.
It's a weird turn of phrase. Because he does have this one little miniature for sale. I actually think it was cheaper when we saw him before. The price went up. That's interesting. But very useful now to have a vendor here that has bleeding and I almost said ghost damage. It's fucking it's not ghost damage, but it looks like it's color coded for ghost flame. So yeah, having this vendor here that gives us access to those items is very useful, especially for a melee build. I could take the infusion off my weapon and I could apply that like aromatic ooze to it, and it would be quite strong. Same thing with lacerating or bleeding serum. But let's see. I think if we use this one, it actually gives us just enough to be able to go down there. So I want to buy the other ones first, so I don't waste my souls.
Well, a very reasonable offer. Just you wait.
Sorry, says I'm a half elf, have light magic, and serve as a healer. Oh, nice. That's quite a nice variety there. It's so nice because I always have my powers if I want to be able to heal people, because that just feels so me. Well, yeah. Healing, I think, is an underrated profession in a lot of games. You're the very backbone of your team in a lot of cases. I think it's just because, for whatever reason...
Well, really, I get such a warm feeling.
Games sometimes struggle with the idea of making support characters feel genuinely fun and rewarding, but I guess that's more of a problem for like for interactive games as opposed to games where you're using more of your own like fantasy and imagination and crafting like that. So,
Hey,
especially if you're collaborating with your friends.
I sell are
I'm somehow not surprised that you decided to to pick a half elf. It seems inconsistent with your. It seems to be consistent with your like avatar and everything like that.
here you are, my friend.
Ooh, nice.
Oh, come on. Don't look so glum. You're hopeless, I tell you. Cheers for that.
Okay. So, yeah, let's get the cat ring anyway, just to help mitigate a little extra fall damage. Oh, hi. I didn't expect to see you there.
Oh, you do the time.
Let's see. Okay. And now we're
Satisfied?
quite well equipped. So this is the sort of thing that people are like, you know, by the time you get to the 3rd hour of the game, you'll have infinite healing items. You can just buy as many healing items as you want, and it totally invalidates the experience because it breaks the whole game because you could just have infinite life gems. Okay, well, at this point in the game, I just beat one of the major bosses. I've been playing for like 25 hours and taking my time, like going pretty slow. And I am currently level, 110. And just after beating that boss, I had 90,000 souls. And I invested like 60 plus thousand of those souls in interesting and intriguing things in the environment and useful tools. And then a little bit of leveling up. And now, if I wanted to, I could technically go here and I could buy a full complement of life gems. And you know what? I am actually going to do that because I want to see how it feels to have 99 life gems, or as close as I can get at the moment, and use them as my primary source of healing. Does it break things as much as people say? My initial feeling is that it probably won't, because I'll probably wind up going through those pretty quickly, wishing that I had used my Estus instead, and then wishing that I had those souls to be able to level up. Because I just spent the equivalent of, like, I think 2 levels that could have been more helpful to me. I could have bought more rings, you know. I could have saved it up for, like, bought some more armor from the bosses. Could have upgraded my armor. I feel like I just gave away, like, a big chunk of money. But this is how people are playing the game, so I want to see what the experience is like, so let's see where it goes. Oh, I should probably put the fucking ring on, actually. Konakun says, I just want to be a knight and cut some monsters down. That's totally fair. I mean, that's one of the appeals of Dark Souls, right? If I take this off, still have enough. Yeah, something, honestly, like, you've played Bloodborne, right? I think we've talked about it. But if you haven't, the first NPC of the game literally says, oh, yeah, you, just go kill some stuff. Like, don't worry about it. It'll do you some good. It'll do you some good. Go find something to kill. Right? So, that first little ladder got us here. If we can go down there, what happens? Okay, go to Luckstone. So that second ladder would have gotten us a little bit further down, but technically speaking, we didn't need that second ladder. And I don't think we can't go back up it. That kind of sucks. I wish you could. I don't know why they didn't extend it just a little bit longer. Maybe they wanted to really make you commit to having to come down here. So this is something that, like, I personally don't like. I don't know if it's a flaw with the game. I just, like, really don't like the climbing mechanics. I feel like they're very wonky and unsatisfying and they're not well enough trained, in my opinion, and well enough reinforced, and the player isn't given enough experience or incentive to use them to then be able to reasonably figure this out, right? Like, I think a lot of players will probably try to walk on that plank in the middle, and then, like, all these bloodstains will probably die, breaking through it and falling down. And then they'll get frustrated and either go away or maybe come back and try again, but feel cheated. I remember some people saying that they felt that way. that was like a little cheap trick. And then I don't know, like this particular maneuver, like ramping up your speed, going over here, and then like suddenly snapping to the right and jumping off. That feels like a lot to ask based on what the players would have been taught at this point. You know what I mean? So there's 600 souls. We'll see how it goes. Okay. I was able to survive it. The moss out of the deal, that's pretty good. Yeah, so that the other ladder is actually quite useful. I think I can just roll down here. Forget. Yeah. Oh, that little overhang, the little outcropping or whatever, can actually push you off the ledge, so you have to be careful with that. So I think... yeah. That the other ladder brings you down there, and you can't jump across there. So that is nice, that kind of a little tease to indicate that there's another path up there. That's just a secret door, essentially, that I can't do anything with now. I do think you can technically continue down here. Like, you could drop off here and fall down there and probably survive that. And then manage to get around this area. So if you do want to continue with the platforming, there are more things you can do, more steps you can take. And I think that makes it pretty fair overall. But still, you know, it's very, very dicey there for a second. Let me see. Beware. Oh yeah, beware of dog. Yes. I'm every time I see a turtle now, or tortoise, which admittedly isn't too often, but every time I do, there's a part of my brain that goes likely dog ahead. And that's just never gonna go. I don't know if you've ever seen that meme of like the guy, it's Drew Gooden, and he's driving in his truck or whatever, and he sees a sign that says road work ahead, and he says, road work ahead, yeah, I sure hope it does. Every fucking time I see a road work ahead sign, I oh, did he just laugh? Hi. Okay. See. What the hell? Huh. Is he unable to be killed? Oh yeah, I can't even target him. That's so weird. He's just sitting there laughing. It's really creepy. What's up with this? I never noticed that before. Let me see. Might want a different... yeah, let's do that. They didn't want to supplement my healing. Yeah, I guess these guys are just... that dressing? Yeah, you can't kill them. That's so weird. Huh. Guess I never tried to before, but I never noticed that. Skulls on the walls are interesting. Cool. Let's see. Is it just me, says Konakun, or does Elf and Milf similarly? They do. They kind of do. Also, there's characters in this game called the Milfanito. Like, and they're related to Nito. So they're like the Milfs for Nito. Wonder about that particular choice. But I doubt it means the same thing in Japanese. Obviously. Asaria's opponent then says, yeah, I agree. When I first got there, I was like, wait, what do I do? Yeah, it seems a little bit much, right? Like, it just feels like a very abrupt skill cliff required of the player for understanding how the game's platforming works and knowing what to do. And granted, you can try through trial and error, but for a game that is mostly about fighting and exploring and stuff like that, the way that they just kind of throw you into the mechanics of jumping puzzles, to me, is always a little weird. I do find that the skeleton's feet, kind of hanging from above, is really kind of oddly serenely beautiful and a little gross at the same time. Like, it captures that nice, like, Miyazaki-esque blend between, like, the macabre and beautiful. Sludgy brown water still kind of feels very smooth and natural to run through, if that makes any sense. Like, it's not a deep, dismal, awful poison swamp, right? So, oh, that's really interesting. That skull actually looks like he's very proud of himself. Something about this area just feels very unnerving. You get the rats kind of idly watching you from within the walls, but not attacking you. You know they're going to come out. You know something's going to happen. Oh, but they're actually, you can't target lock them either. So their AI or whatever is just disabled, I guess. Oh, is it because... Hang on. It's because I'm in the Covenant of the Rat, isn't it? Oh, that would make sense. Well, let's see. Let's see if they attack me later. Now, I could try to... Let's see. I think I have some Ferrous Lockstones in my inventory. Yes, I do. I have a lot. So, something that changed between this game and the base game was that they increased the number of... Well, certainly they increased the number of the fragrant branches of yore. They gave you more things to unlock with them, and then you also had more to find. So it went up from like 7 or like 3 in the base game to 20 or something like that, maybe 30. And on the one hand, it does make for like a more diverse array of puzzles. Oh, the lighting definitely changes things. I gotta use a torch more often. It definitely diversifies things quite a bit, right? Because it gives you more things to find, which is always nice. Makes you feel like going through your environments, you're finding more meaningful, valuable items or whatnot. But it also kind of cheapens them a little bit in a way, in that if you're finding them all over the place, just like the puzzling stone sword thing that we were talking about before, then it makes it feel just a little bit less special. The fact that there was only 3 in the base game meant that every single one you found felt super rare and super precious and special. And now I think that's been watered down just a little bit. But it does allow you more flexibility to interact with the mechanic. It also rewards you for being cautious about and mindful of the environment. Like if you look at the fact that the lockstone is right in front of the bridge, then you're probably going to be like, oh, okay, so that does that. And then if you get in here, you know, basically there's an opportunity for you to potentially waste a lockstone if you activate that bridge down there. But I think that bridge is redundant. I don't think it gives you access to anything else unless... No, it's just... It gives you access to a platform above and below, but you can do that anyway. So yeah, it kind of like gives you a safe space to experiment with lockstone use. If you wind up wasting one, it's not the end of the world. Very kind of creepy and intriguing. Makes you wonder like why they were... It's such an odd way to bury a person, right? Is to place them inside this, essentially a sarcophagus, or almost looks like more like an oven, and then also chain them down. Like, were they restrained and fed to the rats or something like that? Anyway, Saria says, every time I reach a platforming segment in a Souls game, I always hear Frederick from Fire Emblem in my mind, pick a god and pray. Yeah, it's have you done the sequence in Elden Ring where you have to go down through to the frenzied flame and you're just like falling down all those tombstones? That shit took years off my life. It was, yeah. Konakun says, a useful tip for Bloodborne: you are the hunter and they are your prey. Remember that the game becomes easier if you remember that. That's true. I mean, the church hunters definitely don't seem to be the type to engender empathy for the things they hunt, except for Maria, but that only happens after the fact, right after the fishing hamlet. But still, oh man, I have to do like a Bloodborne music stream at some time, because I was listening to the soundtracks and just there's so much just genius shit that's happening in the Bloodborne soundtrack. It's really phenomenal. But anyway, I do think also the bonfire placement, maybe not the greatest. Like, we just had a bonfire that was within an easy, like, minute run of here. And especially since I'm in the Rat Covenant, I mean, obviously that would change if I weren't. But I don't think it's entirely necessary to have this bonfire right here. I think, especially given what the Souls games tend to expect of you challenge-wise, it wouldn't be terrible to just, you know, that could be another potential use of the Pharaoh's Lockstone, is you can give yourself more paths and help make it easier for you to run through the level and then not have to worry about the rats that you were encountering as much. Yeah, give you like a couple of Lockstones nearby and encourage you to use them in creative ways like that. That makes sense. Okay. So granted that I'm probably over-leveled for this. Oh, I forgot they petrify. I have the music too low, but the soundtrack for this boss fight is also really good. I do like the idea of a swarm boss fight. It's not something that's done all that much in the Souls games. I don't think there was one in Elden Ring for sure. But I also oh shit, I gotta be careful of that. I also like the fact that they don't really do a whole lot of damage to you, so it's not so much a battle of attrition with regards to your health, but instead they're given this mechanic of they build up petrification, and if you wind up taking petrification damage, you'll die. It's just a not one shot, but like when you reach the full bar, you of course like wind up instantly dying, is what I'm trying to say. And as a result, you really just have to make sure that you're positioning yourself correctly and not getting yourself into a situation where you are getting hit a lot of times in quick succession by little attacks, right? And so it's interesting. The fight overall kind of takes damage and flips it on its head and explores a different kind of threat to the player. If that makes sense. So yeah, I think that's actually pretty smart. Ooh, okay, so this is really interesting. That the presence of that skull there suggests to me that this is probably in the Tomb of the Giants, or at least has a connection to the Tomb of the Giants, because if I remember correctly, that particular skull is the skull of one of those sort of primal ape-like enemies that can attack you while you're down there, those primal skeleton type enemies. The armor sets down here also look a little bit like the Baldur Knights from Dark Souls 1. I don't think they're quite the same, but they are similar, and it makes me kind of wonder if this was like people went through and like pillaged the Tomb of the Giants at some point and dug up some of their shit, and this is what they found. Let's see. That grave definitely seems to have, or that tomb definitely seems to have more significance over there. That sarcophagus. I'm not sure whose it is. Might be Pharaoh's? I'm not sure.
Speak thy mind, servant.
Yeah. I don't know, I gotta, what does Bale, does Egon say after that? I will, I can't even think of it. Honestly, like, as much as I do sort of curse the silliness of it, of some of the arguments, I'm grateful in a way because it's given me a lot to talk about, right? So, I hope he does another debate. I hope he does like 10 more debates because it'll give me a whole bunch more stuff to nitpick. So, Konakun says, to be fair, Lawrence, your first thought as a side effect wouldn't have been werewolves. True. I mean, are you familiar with the idea that I think it was Lawrence, right, was supposed to be a character who your character was looking for, and you were going to sort of search for them and like follow in their footsteps throughout the game in an earlier version of the game. Oh yay, the rat sells me shit. Wonderful.
My servant, there has been much honor in I am merciful. My servant.
Okay. So yeah, that was a nice little... Oh. Yeah, it must be the Grave of Giants, right? Gotta be. Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like maybe they were trying to pull the tombs up and scour them for resources or something like that. But it's also like Majula is described as being a previously like a pit where people just threw all their trash and garbage down into, like anything people didn't want. So was there a period where they did that and then eventually they decided, oh wait, there might be actually something valuable down there, maybe we should stop doing that? I had to look into the lore a little bit more. But still, this little like spooky scary skeleton jump scare over here I think is really well done. It's quite creepy, but also there's something a little bit noble and dignified to it. Yeah. Hands look too small for his body. It's really weird. Very intriguing. So ironically, I kind of feel like this platforming stuff over here is honestly like a little bit more fair than what we did before, but let me see if that holds up. Because it's like, okay, that particular, outcropping of sarcophagi was placed right at a natural opening in the floor. It's very clear that you had to jump onto it. Seems like there's a very clear path down here, right? Feels pretty safe. No tricks or traps or whatever, just gotta be cautious. It is interesting to me that the coffins, like from a lore perspective here, are appearing in groups of 2. I wonder if there's something to that. But yeah, I wonder if there's a reason narratively why they're appearing together like that. Are they couples that have been buried together or something like that? Visions of merchant. Oh, over there. See? Oh, don't give up skeleton. Yeah, nice. Yeah, this is a very nice, very evocative, and a quiet but beautiful area. Quietly beautiful area. I think over there is... So this is an interesting little optional jumping challenge, which I don't think I want to try because I think I'm going to die. But I have the cat ring, and I can start buffering a life gem, which is a cool function of the life gems, by the way. It's just your ability to, like, preemptively heal, and I fucked it up. Yep. And I think as a result, I wound up missing out on another important item, so I'll have to come back here later. Yep. So we have a return of our exploding friends. Except these actually deal more damage and not petrification. Oh, I guess I get another chance. They actually deal a different, like a more intense version of the fire damage than the one we've seen at the Bastille. But it is interesting to note that there's a connection between these enemies and the Bastille. I think most players will have gone to the Bastille first, and when they hear those chains rattling, the first thing they're going to do is like whip their head around and look for them. I think maybe in vanilla more of them came out at the same time, and so this is sort of a bit of a reduction in overall intensity. I guess it would have made more sense, maybe, if they had been petrification related, because we just had petrifying rats. But it's not a mistake or anything for them to decide to mix it up a little bit. I think I'm going to go with... Yeah, I got to go down this way. Whew. Okay. No, okay, I'm not falling for it. I'm just not even going to waste my time with the stupid lizards. Okay, I think there's a Titanite shard in here or something like that. Oh, Ash Knuckle Ring. Okay, that's still valuable. Sorry, it says this whole place is so spooky and gross, but I love the aesthetic. Yeah, it's got this sort of very creepy, but almost like noble quality to it. I don't know how to describe it. Well, like, I don't know. There happens to be a graveyard, not a graveyard, a cemetery near where I live, and it's a very kind of pretty place, and in a slightly haunting way, and it allows dogs to be walked there, so I will go pretty frequently. And just looking at the gravestones there, looking at the designs and the messages that people have left on their tombstones, and the way that they decide to like design their sarcophagi or their like little mausoleums or whatever, like how they decide to be remembered visually, is there's a certain kind of beauty. Sounds a little bit too like hand wavy. I'm not exactly sure what the right word for it is, but it's very macabre and very kind of like harrowing, I guess, when you think about just how much death is around us at all times, all over the place. But also kind of like oddly reassuring and comforting to see that, like, well, you're gonna have to deal with this eventually, and that kind of sucks. But a lot of other people have also done so, and they found a way to like leave a little something behind, and maybe it's slightly not so bad because you're all kind of in it together. And the idea of death being a source of comfort in this game is, it's like a really weird there's like this weird philosophy that it introduces, that like life itself is has a fundamental problem that people in this universe can't resolve, and they can't really die because they have the undead curse. So they kind of just go to the undead crypt and decide, we're just gonna hang out here and basically like be in slumber, and that's gonna be our way of addressing the problem. We're just gonna not address it at all, right? We're going to separate ourselves from it. But obviously, like, that doesn't solve anything. That doesn't get them out of the curse. All it does is lead to them kind of like festering and moldering away quietly and removed from the rest of the world, while the rest of the world like continues to suffer through its like cycle of pain or whatnot. And so we get kind of a Buddhist notion of blah, 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 Buddhism, non-attachment, cycles of hatred, cycles of pain and desire, et cetera, right? But it is an interesting concept. I think the game does explore it very well. But areas like that, like the Grave of Saints, kind of go through and I think try to depict death as simultaneously sad and harrowing and awful in some ways, but also with a certain nobility to it in the way that people, not to death itself, but the way in which people try to try to make their peace with the fact that it is an inevitable part of life, I guess, right? Like, some people just kind of get to the point where they're like, okay, this is coming eventually, and there's nothing I can do about it, but I can at least take some comfort in the fact that, like, there are others before me who have also faced that. I don't know if that's making any sense at all, but that vague, abstract, very difficult to describe feeling is something that I get when marching through areas like that. I feel like none of that made any sense. Maybe. Okay. I do love how quiet and creepy this area is. I'll turn my volume up, actually. Just sort of like a very low and slow heartbeat type sound. Heart type beat. And so obviously the fuck. The temptation here is to compare this area to Blighttown, and it kind of is, in a certain sense, a Blighttown 2.0. But at the same time, I think it does take the idea of Blighttown and kind of riff on it in a way that makes it feel, in some ways, even scarier. Now, I'll just get this out of the way, right? So if you look at this pillar, this is just nonsense. I don't know how to reconcile this. I feel like this is just objectively a bug. If people want to talk about the game being objectively broken, there's something being objectively wrong with it, I think this is the where you could go to look. Because this is just a bunch of different textures from the game, as far as I can tell, that are just like slapped onto this pillar. And the idea is that these pillars are supposed to be like big amalgamations, big spires made out of garbage that is just like flowing down towards the bottom of the earth, right? But previously they had things in here like a bicycle, a car, and a fucking like pack of Heineken or something like that. Now you can see there are some creepy skeletons and monks and stuff and some of the architecture and whatnot, but there were just modern things from our day and things that are totally out of proportion, totally skewed. And I think this is temporary art. This is placeholder art. This is like they were going through and they needed something to put in here to represent like all the filth that was flowing through here, and then they just ran out of time or didn't get to it, and they didn't replace it. I don't know why they didn't address it in Scholar. At least they took out like the branded stuff, namely the Heineken cans or whatever. But it's really one of those things that is very difficult to reconcile and be like, oh no, this is why this is actually not such a bad idea or whatever. But I will say that I don't think, in my opinion, no developer wants to make a bad game. In my experience, nobody wants to ship something that's just outright broken. There is some stuff down here that feels a little bit more modern, like that trunk over there feels a little bit more modern to me for whatever reason. So maybe the idea was that this particular society, like the gutter, was supposed to be a society or a kingdom that, rather than being one of the more medieval kingdoms that was in that sort of age and era of glory, instead was more one that was a bit more technologically advanced. Like maybe their plan was to depict it as being something closer to a Bloodborne. And so seeing a car down here would have been really weird if we were trying to put it into the same basic time frame as everything else. But the idea would be that, well, that's kind of the thing. Like, this particular kingdom, this particular civilization managed to outstrip all the other ones, but it's still, at the end of the day, it didn't work. It was not good enough, right? To escape from the curse. Sorry says, no, you're making sense. It's a very difficult thing to understand or even describe because it's kind of beyond us in a lot of ways. Oh, okay. I'm glad some of it was getting through. Thank you. Outside the surface level of understanding that death comes for us all. Yeah, it's weird, like I've definitely been thinking about that, like older than I was when I wasn't as old as I am. And, some people who were with me a decade ago aren't with me now. And so every once in a while you just kind of stop and think about what that means and how to deal with that information. And I guess I've been kind of walking this line of being like, this is completely fucking unacceptable. And also, everybody else has dealt with this unacceptable thing, and some of them have found a way to deal with it in a way that still has some dignity and humor. One of the graves I was walking by had like a beautiful like laser etching of Yoda from the thing that Yoda is from. What's wrong with me? Star Wars, obviously. And so, there are people who are like, I'm going to use like the last piece of art or whatever that I make to kind of make people smile as they walk by, or like give them a little morale boost or something. And that's really fucking cool, Konakun says, have you watched an anime where the only bad part was that it was too short? For me, I watched an anime just like that yesterday. Yeah, I think... Well, to be honest, the 1997, was it, version of Berserk, it ended very, very abruptly, and it felt like there needed to be much more of that to kind of, if you're familiar with the manga, you'll know that it, there's a way out of here, that it goes on for much, much longer, and it was like a very, very abrupt place to end it. Very impactful, but still something that I was like, no, you can't stop it here. What? Like, I was so confused. But then I also saw, this is a long time ago, but I remember seeing like a short, like 1 or 2 part episode of something called Senko Roll, which I liked a lot at the time, but it only got like the 1 episode or so. I just finished watching Ranma 1/2, which we talked about a little bit last time, and granted, like the manga itself is much longer, but the Netflix series is only 12 episodes long, and so, I definitely want to see where the series goes. They kind of ended a little bit abruptly. So yeah, what is the... Yeah, the thing that the character Yoda is from... Have you ever heard of the Star Wars character Yoda? Yeah, I can't remember where he's from. Probably from a show called The Yoda Show. Have you watched an anime? Oh, yeah, Konakun, what is the anime you're referring to? I'm very curious. So this is an area of the game that I wish I knew more about lore-wise. This is one of my blind spots for the lore, to be honest. But I will say that I love the inclusion of these items. They obviously look like some sort of a twisted, warped heart, but the heart itself, like, it contains acid, and the acid will corrode your gear. And since item degradation is a much more like alive and a difficult thing to deal with in Dark Souls 2 than Dark Souls 1. Oh, fragrant branch, nice. It makes the area feel all that much more threatening, and also like kind of encourages you, I think, to either use a greater variety of items to protect yourself against like running out of viable items. Like have 2 or 3 armor sets with you in case one of them breaks. Have 2 or 3 weapons in case one of them breaks, and or just engage with the durability mechanic more or carry like repair powder and stuff like that. It's also interesting that we have these statues of what I perceive to be feminine figures that are spitting poison out of their mouths, and that combined with these hearts that are filled with like bile and acid or whatnot, it definitely makes the whole place feel like there are these. Oh, that's the other thing, right? These statues here, the pyres that are burning the fires, I think those are bones. If you look closely, they look like human bones. So the idea is that the statues themselves are potentially filled with bones, and then you're igniting the bones as you go through to light up the way. It's kind of similarly to a bonfire. Oh, I missed one of those. Oh, it's gonna bother me. I go back and do it. Nah, fuck it. Just keep going. But yeah, so really interesting kind of imagery and theming, I guess, for lack of a better word, going on here. I like the fact that the place still feels like a maze, feels like a labyrinth, but also, it is very dark, and if you go through it in the dark, you'll be at a massive disadvantage. But the process of going through and lighting it up feels pretty satisfying. It's nice to be able to see it, have a visual indicator of how far you've made it. You can start to recognize different parts of the area as landmarks as you go. Something that starts off feeling like a totally inscrutable, just like black abyss, winds up starting to feel familiar the deeper and deeper you go into it. And it feels like you're gradually, slowly, like reclaiming the area by bringing light to it in a way. But it's also like actively pushing back against you with a variety of different traps and such. Hidden enemies. Those dogs as well. Kind of interesting that they, like these guys over here. No, you don't. I feel like the level does a good job of putting you in situations where you really wish you could use your shield, but you really don't want to give up your shield. Oh yeah, you can see there's a, oh, hang on. Oh, that's really hard to see. Yeah. There's actually, so there's like a rib cage and a couple of bones, but there's also a tiny little face in there as well. That's creepy. And then this guy's like leaning onto it as well. So very interesting that these things that can be a source of hazard and pain and cause you, poison damage and threaten your life are also something that these characters seem to be drawn towards and can be a source of light and comfort and warmth for the residents here. Hello, skeleton. Yeah, so this whole area just oozes atmosphere, but it's an atmosphere that kind of gets revealed to you bit by bit as you play, and rewards you for like being inquisitive as well. I will say that this is one of the caveats of the multiplayer parts of the game. Oh, hello, friend. Is just that the writing on the ground and all like the glowing bloodstains and stuff like that in the distance do kind of compromise the immersion a little bit, because it's like revealing parts of the level that maybe you shouldn't see. I feel like this level would be all that much creepier if you played offline. Yeah. Just because you're getting little not cheats or whatever, but you're getting a little preview of what's to come, and part of the intrigue of this, part of the intrigue of this space that you didn't get with Blighttown in Dark Souls 1 is just, you know, being in a complete and total black abyss, which then you can choose whether or not to fight against with your torch. I do think the torch's light radius should be lesser. I think it should be less bright, because it does feel very almost comforting and reassuring. But I think they could have potentially reduced it. If they did so, it would have potentially made you feel like you were just barely stemming off the darkness with this thing. Instead, it just feels like you're piercing through it, and maybe that's a little excessive. Like you can kind of see the bonfire in the distance, and on the one hand, it feels comforting, it feels reassuring because you know that that's a safe spot, but it's like so far away, it's so small, and there is no clear path on how to get there. You have no idea how far it really is in terms of its actual like practical distance, in terms of like, you navigating there and fighting enemies. There's a suggestion that it's probably up that way, but how do you even get up that way, right? So really a great level for just making you feel completely lost, like turning you around, but also giving you little hints and little breadcrumbs that then you can, like, I don't know, bold and underline as you go. Not just sort of compulsively slashing these statues. So, granted, I haven't felt the need to use my Estus so far. I haven't really engaged in any major combat for the most part. But I have, you know, just kind of doing these little encounters over here. And I've already used, like, what, 10 life gems? So I feel like I've burned through 3,000 souls just in a little bit of exploring. I haven't been playing too recklessly either. Oh, they're kind of revealing to me. This is interesting, and getting a trickle of enemies that are kind of coming down. Oh, do you see that leg glitch? He seems to be confused about the stairs. Granted, I could get even more health back with Ring of the Evil Eye. Oh, shit. Okay. Okay. I'm actually going to take a quick break because I should, like, go get some water real quick. So I think I'm going to take like a 5-minute break and then be right back. But I need to quit to the title screen because otherwise it's going to, the enemies are going to attack me and all that. And if I alt tab out, it's going to mess up my, my setup. I got to find a fix for that. So let me see. I might be able to just do this. Yes, okay. So 5-minute break. Hope everybody's doing well in the meantime. I'll see you soon. Okay. Here we go. Thank you for your patience. Oh yeah, jellyfish can't swim in the night, says Konakun. I have that written down to check out. It was only 12 episodes and it felt like they tried to shove so much in the last episode. Oh, okay. That kind of sucks when they rush it like that. It felt anticlimactic. It's still 7 out of 10 for me, and on a good day it's 9 out of 10. I need to check that out, yeah. I read the description of it and it sounded like something that would be up my alley. I was just, I want to make sure that I have a clear head going into it, you know? Konakun says, and you know the worst part, it was anime original, so it doesn't have a manga. Oh, that's rough. Do you think there's going to be a second season or a follow-up or anything like that? Is the, creator or the creative team still working on it? Let's see. Sorry says he's very confused. He wasn't trained for what to do when he finds the enemies. I think I lost the plot there. I'm sorry. Could you remind me what that was referring to, please? Konakun says, in the future, I'm Konakun's scholar of Sailor Moon. Sailor Moon is something I'd never gotten into, but I feel like it's one of those things that's just such a, like, long-term part of, or what do you call it? Like an iconic part of anime history. Now, I do wonder, I have to go back and see, what the culture was like implied to be in Blighttown. But it is interesting to me, for lack of a better word, interesting, that there are pig carcasses, what appear to be pig carcasses, hung up here. Okay, those guys do quite a lot of damage. Pretty big threat. Yeah, see, it looks like they actually have decently fresh meat, which is weird to see, like, meat hanging up on hooks to dry down here in an area that's supposed to be, like, ravaged with disease and starvation. Maybe the narrative is just different here. But they have, like, sacks of potatoes and shit. Yeah. Now I want to go back and see how Blighttown compares, because that feels a little bit at odds with the narrative of the space. I mean, obviously they have to eat, but... Well, actually, no. Hollows don't. Right? Like, Hollows specifically, like, the undead don't. Oh, whoa, that's cool. That is so cool. Look at that, there's like a shadow moth there. Huh. What can I do? Firebomb? Yeah. That was awesome. I don't think I've ever seen that before. Wow, cool. Yeah, so it does look like they have some sort of primitive civilization that they've erected down here. And it might be a little bit more advanced than we might think of a place like this. It doesn't feel quite like, quite as iconic, I guess, as the first game. But it does still feel very overwhelming. And the total darkness and the lack of an ability to see the bottom definitely makes it feel all the more threatening and awe-inspiring, I think. It's just, when you're in Blighttown, the sense of overwhelm you get is from just the filth and the grime and the decay. But when you're down here, it feels like something a bit more lonely, something a bit more chilling, a little bit more foreign. And here's the bonfire. I feel like it could have stretched even further. Like that didn't feel very difficult at all. Didn't feel really like I put all that much pressure, but I think most people will probably bounce off of Iron Keep and come down here before leveling up. Now with the torches and the lights, the whole place does feel kind of bustling. It feels like a very primitive society, but I mean, like, it does feel oddly more like a place that people are actively living in. Like, it seems like they've got stuff going on. Like, they're getting up to things. They're preparing meals. They have pet dogs. Very spicy, like, acid-marked dogs. Like, pock-marked dogs, but still. Konakun says, I want a second season. I want more Kano-chan. I hope you get one. I hope one comes out. Honestly, it's reminding me of my experience with Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 2 when I initially got into Dark Souls 1. I played Demon Souls first, and I absolutely hated it. I got to like Boletaria, and I was doing really well. I was going very carefully, and it took me about an hour. And then I tried to walk. Like, I expected there would be invisible walls that would block you from walking off cliffs and stuff like that, because that's the case in like every game. And that wasn't the case. Oh shit, that wasn't the case in Demon Souls, because they weren't holding your hand like that. And so I fell off and died after about somewhere between half an hour and an hour of progress. And I was like, this game is too hard. This game is unfair. So I'm not playing it anymore. And then I thought, okay, all of these people who are fans of Dark Souls must only like it because it's hard. Like, that's what everybody says, right? It's so hard. It's like the hardest game in the world, blah, blah, blah. So I'm not going to subject myself to this masochistic bullcrap. And then I decided I'm never going to play this. And then I saw a friend of mine playing it, and I saw, like, I was watching, like, AGDQ at one point, Awesome Games Done Quick, the speedrunning marathon, and there was a Swedish guy who was playing Dark Souls, and I was like, oh, that's cool. There's, like, knights and stuff. Oh, that's a cool little dragon over there. I like that. And so I was kind of like, maybe there's something here that I should check out, and I tried it, and then kind of fell in love with it, like, really hard. Really, really liked that game a lot. And then, hi friend. And then I basically didn't sorry, I'm kind of distracted by the buggo. But yeah, so I beat the game, and then I was like, very soon after I beat it, Dark Souls 2 was announced, and I was like, oh shit, I was just being like, I just finished this. I just fell in love with it. I was just like, man, I wonder if we're ever going to get a sequel and how long it's going to take. And then it like just comes out immediately. So it's perfectly lined up. If I had to wait for years and years, I would have been very frustrated. So hopefully this just is me trying to say that I hope that you get more of the thing that you love, because that is always nice. It feels good. So this this bug, Ant Queen, I think it's called, is one of the few, like, friendly environmental entities in the game. You don't have to attack it. I don't think you get anything from it. Maybe some moss or something like that. But yeah, before Elden Ring introduced insects as giant killable things, this game did. And if I remember correctly, this mist either heals your poison or it restores your equipment. I think this is the one that heals your poison, and the equipment restoration is in a later part of the game, a different thing. The design of this creature is definitely based on real-world creatures, but also feels a little bit alien. There is something a little bit cartoonish to it, but also pretty beautiful in its own way. It's very shiny. It's very elegantly arrayed with all of its pincers. It's not like making gross, horrible sounds. Its armor looks like something that's almost like an advanced piece of technology. I love the way that if you move your torch around like this, the light reflection of your torch in her eye kind of looks like the pupil of her eye tracking you, like she's watching the light, which I don't know if that was intentional or anything, but it was a really, really cool little detail. Like, your light is granting her, like, the facsimile of vision. It's just so cool. And the fact that there is this creature here that is not hostile to you at all, that actually helps you if you just take the time to observe it, I think it's just a really great addition. I don't know if it's ever explained, like, what the hell it's doing here, but it definitely adds a whole lot more intrigue as well to this space. How did these people get their hands on this thing, or was it always here? Kona says first her name is Kano, which is similar to Kona, and second, she has yellow hair, and girls who have yellow or blonde hair automatically gets a point from me. Well, it's good to know what your preferences are. Fuck. At least I'm not too far away from the bonfire. one of my favorite games when I was younger was, still is, but when I was younger was Silent Hill 3, and the protagonist Heather. I think I really liked her aesthetic, and I think for me, like, something about short blonde hair just is really cool, and I don't. For a while, I was like, why the hell is this particular, like, where is this coming from? And then I realized, oh yeah, it's something about just me falling in love with that game. I think programmed my brain to be like, okay, if you see somebody who looks like this person, that's that's a good thing, if that makes any sense. Like, I formed the Pavlovian association or something. Yeah, so we were talking a bit about, well, actually I'm getting ahead of myself. I want to talk at some point about remakes, specifically about the Demon's Souls remake. That was another game that I really liked the first time I played through, but now have serious, like, objections to, but it's sort of difficult to get into without going on a whole rant. It is interesting to note that those, it's kind of hard to tell, but those characters who just came by and attacked me, one of them had a dagger, and the dagger, or a broken straight sword, and the broken straight sword was covered in like a dark aura effect, which I believe does curse build-up damage. And it's interesting to note that the merchant hag also has a weapon that does that, or like her hand when she does her grab attack does the same thing to you. So I think that's just another way of like connecting her to this place. And it certainly does seem like it, like if you look at how her, both how her like skin looks and all that, and also just her equipment and garb and everything, it looks like she might have found a way to kind of get herself up, out from under here. That makes sense. Like, she found a way to crawl out of the gutter and make a name for herself on the surface, which is pretty impressive considering. This is also another space in which, you know, arguably... Oh, these guys do a shit ton of damage. Oh, right, so it's not curse buildup, it's just like flat dark damage, but it does quite a lot. This is another area where I feel like this jumping puzzle, or how can I say, what we just went through a moment ago, right, coming down here, feels like a pretty decent way of familiarizing the player with jump mechanics, or like with like falling puzzles. I guess falling puzzles would be a good way to put it, because there are several different pathways down. They're not too far down. They're not too far away from a bonfire, and they kind of reward careful observation and approximation of the damage that you'll take in a way that's fair. Whereas the ones in Majula, you know, with the pit, feel a little bit unfair with the flimsy plank that kind of falls apart underneath you, and the tricky jumps that you have to do. I feel like if I were designing a space as a gameplay designer, I would put something like this first. Like, this is a little jungle gym that is essentially relatively safe and relatively easy to learn, but still rewards you for kind of careful observation and consideration of your paths down. There are multiple different paths that you can try out of different heights, and if you die, it's not that big a deal, and if you lose a little bit of if you like miss a path, it's not that big of a deal to go back and try again. So this feels like it should be level 1, and then going down the pit feels like it should be level 2, if that makes sense. Now these pots will do acid damage to me, and will break my shit in my inventory. So you can use a throwing knife to break them. A little difficult to aim, but totally doable. So, oh, yeah, I guess it's a little bit suboptimal that we have gotten 2 branches of yore here in the course of the last like 10 minutes, or 15, or half an hour or so, whereas, you know, in the original game you wouldn't get but one of them for or 3 of them for the entire game, something like that. So. Kona says, my love for blondes came from an anime named Your Lie in April and the character Kaori Miyazuno. I'll have to check that out too. Is it like sounds like a one of those endearing sort of romances? Larry says, I always forget about these super dark sections, but they really help with setting the tone and atmosphere. Yeah, I absolutely agree. And the process of going through and lighting up the that whole area gradually as you explore. There's still a bunch of shit that I didn't explore, like bunch of branching pathways and stuff that I didn't quite get to. I'm just kind of focused on critical path, but yeah. There's like an extra, I think there's like a hidden room with a key and Havel's set or something like that. And it's tough to find because everything kind of looks the same. You gotta really pay attention to how everything's laid out. But going back to the gutter after surviving that, awful gauntlet of darkness, and looking back on your work, so to speak, after having lit it all up and seeing it just like glowing is a really cool feeling. I do feel like the lack of more disease, well, it's weird because they have the statues that shoot poison, but there's something about going through Blighttown with a slow, constantly trickling poison just gradually, slowly eating away at you that I think is lost here with the increase in speed of the poison mechanics. And also, those little blow dart toxic guys, having those as little mini bosses, so to speak, that you could kill and then they wouldn't respawn, but until then they would serve as really significant threats. Something about this, ironically, this gutter feels a little bit cleaner, a little bit tidier, a little bit more manageable than the Blighttown situation, so to speak. These statues, of course, will spit poison globs at us, and they can be pretty annoying to deal with because they stagger you. So it's not just the poison damage over time, but it's also just the way that they. 1 second. But also just the way that they will hold you in place to take damage for longer. If you listen very carefully, I don't know. Oh, hi. I don't know if it'll really come across in the recording, but there is a very low, deep, guttural bass pounding sound in my headphones that I believe is meant to simulate a heartbeat, and it sounds a whole lot like the beating heart of Latria in Demon Souls. I think that was probably the inspiration for it. But, this is interesting. Was there okay. Yeah, I don't know how you were ever supposed to figure out that Lucatiel was back here. I don't think she was here in the first, in vanilla. But.
Oh, you... My thoughts are very scattered. What is this curse? The question rings in my mind, but I haven't the focus to answer it. Loss frightens me no end. Loss of memory, loss of self. If I were told that by killing you I would be freed of this curse, then I would draw my sword without hesitation. I don't want to die. I want to exist. I would sacrifice anything at all for this. It shames me, but it is the truth. Sometimes I feel obsessed with this insignificant thing called self. Even so, I am compelled to preserve it. Am I wrong to feel so? Surely you do the same in my shoes. Maybe we're all cursed. From the moment we're born. Sometimes I feel even alone. Maybe we're all from the moment we're born.
I just want to sit with that for a little bit. I want to try to provide an analysis or commentary on it, but just, I don't know. There's something very gripping about the way that she's grappling with the nature of the curse and desire and her role in it and what she's prepared to do to maintain her sense of self. The acknowledgement that that might be something that's just inherently a part of life is something that this game is commenting on in subtle and overt ways. Finding her down here after that, like, what will be, especially for a first-time player, a very harrowing gauntlet to go through and survive, I think it's just helps reinforce the idea of her being a source of comfort and camaraderie, and the relief it must, especially if you've been like stuck down here for hours and then you finally get here, then you finally see like a friendly face. It's like, oh my god, the sense of relief and attachment you're gonna feel is just so great. And then as you encounter that person, you find that they're grappling with this horrible like dilemma, then it just kind of adds a really dire, bittersweet notion or feeling to everything. So something that's interesting over here is that there are these horrible fucking tar monsters that show up out of the tar, but what you can do is you can roll around with your torch, and if you do that, then you will create poison or like fiery hazards. See what I mean about the stagger? And those fiery hazards will damage them if they stay there. I'm gonna die if I stay there. So I mean, like, these things are really cool and creepy. I think you could argue that they're a little bit of a departure from the normal like Souls aesthetic, for sure. But at the same time, they're also an interesting trap with an interesting way of dealing with them, and a very cool and unique enemy design that we don't see in the Souls series that much anymore. Okay, let me find a safe space to then try to read what you said, Kona. Kona says, Your Lion April is one of the few animes that has made me cry. The others are Berserk, Naruto, One Piece, and Monster. Oh yeah, sometimes it's good to have a good cry, so to speak. Like, I was listening to some music the other day, and it just really affected me in a powerful way. I wasn't expecting it. It's like, well, I hadn't planned for this, but it's just like, I felt the emotions kind of welling up, and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna kind of let this out and feel it, and it was great. And it can be very useful to have that kind of emotional connection with a piece of art from time to time. So this is a fucking nightmare, but appropriately so, right? Like, it's one of the more dark and disturbing parts of the lore and everything, or of the world. Really interesting kind of like grub design. What's the word I'm looking for? What are those words? Well, like, they kind of look like botfly larvae. If you're familiar with those. Let's see. If you're not familiar, botfly larvae are like, there are flies that will, I'm getting some of the biology wrong here, but they will like lay their eggs on your skin, and like, I guess trigger warning for people who don't like insect talk for the next 60 seconds, but like, the grubs or whatever they're called, the larvae, will kind of burrow under your skin, and then they have these little protruding hooks, essentially, of keratin or whatever, and if you try to pull them out, they will dig in with those little black hooks and like refuse to leave, or you can get them out, but you'll end up tearing the skin when you do that, and it's very uncomfortable. So really, you have to find a doctor or somebody to extract them, has to go very, very slowly and carefully, and just like slowly wiggle them free without agitating them so much that they realize what's happening and start to dig their hooks in. And that's what those things remind me of. Yeah, I mean, like, there's a lot going on here, but this is a great example of how the target lock-on system can work really well in, like, helping you focus on a particularly challenging enemy in an area that is, you know, kind of filled with different sorts of hazards. I felt like I was almost in one of those bullet hell games where I was circling around the different environmental hazards and I had the projectiles flying at me every which way. It felt very, like, action heavy for an earlier Souls title. So far, I'm really enjoying this. Yes, the statues are a little annoying, but if you just take your time, they're really not that bad to deal with. Just kind of, you know, be cautious as you go through, obviously. But that applies to everything. Now, notice this entire time that I've burned through quite a few of my life gems. So I'm down from, like, almost 90 to below 70. Okay. Trying to be thorough, trying to explore everything. Really, really cool little detail here to see that they have a dragon, and it looks like the poison might be actively either corrupting the dragon bones or seeping through the dragon bones or something like that. There's something that's kind of hinted at in an earlier section, but also in Bloodborne, that, like, poison and acid and stuff might actually, like, in Bloodborne, some of the sources of poison seem to just be, like, environmental, natural sources of goo for other living things that aren't necessarily poisonous to them, if that makes sense. Like alien blood, or just a puddle of water that an alien might splash around in, might not hurt them, but will hurt us because our immune system or whatever can't deal with it. So I wonder if there's something similar going on here, where, like, the bones of the dragon were part of the corruption of this place. And now we have a little bonfire that's a bit closer to the entrance. Kona says, I'm a rather critical person, so if I like something, it has to be really good. Like that absolute cinema type thing. Oh, yeah. I can have that tendency too. I totally understand that. And then Kona says, that is why Lucky Star is absolute cinema. Well, more reason for me to catch up on it, yeah. I got the OP stuck in my head the other day, so it's about time to go see it in context. Okay, so let's see if we can do the route, and I think we should be able to do this tonight. There is also a, whatchamacallit, there's another cavern over there with some more secrets. There's a couple of giants down there. I'm going to focus on the boss just for the time being, but, will be worth going and looking at that stuff later. Oh yeah, right, the woodland children are twins. Oh, can you get poisoned too? Oh, I'm still poisoned. Watch out for that. Yeah, I guess I could try to use the environmental hazards. It looks like both of these characters have the different halves of that shield. And then... So, sorry, I can explain that better. So each of them has a great shield, but the great shield, when pressed up against the other one, forms a complete set. And there's an enemy later in the game who has both of those shields and holds them out in front of himself and basically forms an impassable barrier that you have to try and figure out your way around. It's, like, very, very difficult to do any damage to unless you find a way to get around that, right? Oh, hi, my cat showed up. Hi, buddy. I do want to see if Lucatiel's summon sign is around here, because ideally we would progress her quest line. I don't remember where it's located, so let me just poke around for just a second and see if I can find it. Of course, I have to not get mobbed by all these enemies. Is it back here? Yeah, there we go. Okay. I'll go out and try to clear some of them. Okay. Just don't want her to have to run into it. Yeah, with Lucatiel's help, we should have no problem dealing with the boss, I don't think. But I don't want her to get poisoned either. Make sure to watch Lucky Star OVA. It has that Kagami and Konata moment. Okay, yeah. Will do. Oh, that was something, I guess. Like, I watched Little Witch Academia. It was like a one shot, right? And I remember at the time being like, this is really cool, but 25 minutes is not enough to really tell the whole story. I wish there was more. Listen closely for a second. You kind of hear like the rattling of chains and moaning in the distance. Oh, bad timing, kitty cat. Off the table, please. Okay, probably going to be a little focused out for the fight itself. Especially given my little healing self-challenge over here. I'm in the fire. I fucking... Great. Okay, so I need to be a little bit more attentive to my environment. Also, cat showing up in the middle of my run here is not the most helpful, but very cute. Hi, buddy. Cat went to the vet a couple of times this past week. No big deal, just regular check-in. He's totally fine, but he's a little bit stressed because of that. Okay, buddy. What is she attacking? Okay, here we go. Let's try this again. Cat off the table, please. Excuse me. Okay, here we go. Okay, so far so good. Really like the way that this boss kind of incorporates elements of stuff like the adjudicator, while also kind of innovating on the design and the environment a little bit more. You can notice that the little crawling characters along the bottom will... Oh, interesting. They'll actually... watch their limbs as he moves around. Like, he's not just like scooting across the environment. They're actually pulling and crawling and scuttling, like the insect legs. They're all kind of contributing to the whole. She needs to survive the boss fight to get the quest. Get out of the fire. Damn it. Okay, I'm gonna do it again just because I think she has to survive in order to progress her quest line. I'm gonna try that again. Daria asks, I want to ask, so far as things have gone, how has your opinions changed or even been reaffirmed on the game? Do you agree or disagree with the criticism or only just some of it? Well, that's a great question, and I think that overall, I still love the game. It is still just purely emotionally, my enjoyment of it and my appreciation for it as a work of art has not changed. I think it has only gotten deeper. I'm able to see, like, to understand more like some of the themes that the game is going for. I wasn't really focused on the character quest lines and stuff like that my first couple playthroughs. I didn't really listen to the music very much, apart from the Majula theme, obviously, but like I didn't really listen too closely to the boss themes or whatnot. Didn't look too closely at items, textures and stuff like that, and think too much about level layout. And the more I spend like kind of critically looking at this game, the more I find that I have a deeper appreciation for. Oh, she got poison. That's the problem. That I have a deeper appreciation for what they accomplished, and I love the game more and more, basically. That being said, I do think the game... Oh, well, there's a good example, right? The game does have significant problems, and one of them is in its hitboxes, and you just saw that. Like, there was a little bit of a glitch there. There are some things that are just really bizarre, like the... or not bizarre, but there are some things that are just... I totally get where people are coming from with things like Iron Keep now. I was watching some videos and saw people complaining about, not to be pejorative or anything, just being like, I don't like Iron Keep, I think it is too hard, I think it is kind of unfair, whatever. And in my head, my knee-jerk reaction was like, oh, you guys, you don't know what you're talking about, it's not that bad. And then I went back and played it, and I was like, no, kind of is. But I still like it, and I still think, even though I got frustrated with it, I was able to identify the source of my frustration as being kind of a lack of creativity on my part. And so, on the one hand, I will say that there are things... Oh, the bizarre things I was talking about. Yay, Lucatil, MVP. Thank you. Good job. On the one hand, there are things like the texture work that we saw down in the, whatchamacallit, in that area in the Bastille where the textures were just, like, pretty objectively glitched. And then, the textures in the gutter and things like that. There are definitely things that are kind of broken and kind of unfinished, or kind of unfortunate at least. And I have started to notice those a bit more now on a subsequent playthrough. There are also boss fights that in my head I had just kind of built up, like the old Dragon Slayer, quote-unquote, Ornstein fight. I was pretty sure that was like this epic, difficult fight with like 2 different phases, and he was launching all kinds of dark-based attacks. I just like had a completely different memory in my head of what that fight was actually like. And it was kind of lame when we played through it recently. Same thing on my sorcerer. Like, I beat it. I went to that area first with my sorcerer on my vanilla playthrough, and just didn't really have much trouble with it. So there are definitely things that I am finding that I agree with the sentiment, at least, or at least empathize with people's perspectives, even though I don't fully agree. But that being said, there's a bunch of other stuff that I feel pretty vindicated or reaffirmed about as well. Like people saying that the soundtrack, everything sounds like Ornstein and Smo. It absolutely does not. People saying that the game is unfair with tons of gank squads, or that it has hidden archers everywhere. Not really the case. People saying that the game doesn't teach you its mechanics, like it doesn't teach you how to use lock on or lock off. Strongly disagree with that. People saying that there are, like, too many of the enemies are dudes in armor, or that there's just, like, too many heavy armored knights or whatever, and there's not enough enemy variety. Disagree with that. I disagree with the frankly bullshit and offensive narrative that the developers are lazy and don't care and just put together whatever game they felt like it because they hate the player and they just want you to suffer. That's a bunch of horse shit and bullshit and other forms of shit, and I've found no evidence substantiating that. I definitely don't ascribe to this weird, nonsensical political take that Dark Souls 2 is easier and liberals like it more because liberals don't like challenges, and they're ruining gaming by making things more accessible in the name of DEI. Like, there's seriously like a cult of people. I shouldn't say cult, right? That's rude. There are some people who are, I think, they are content creators who enjoy kind of stoking a particular fire and feeding a particular narrative for whatever reason. And then there are genuine people who unfortunately get caught up in that maelstrom of like misinformation and political stuff. And some of that political stuff tends to be, well, Dark Souls 1 was great, and it was a great manly game for traditional manly gamers because it was hard and it was about being a lone man against the world, like fighting against insurmountable odds. But then the game wasn't fun, right? It can't be fun, but it was satisfying and it was rewarding, and it gave you a sense of relief after your struggle. And that's what we need more. We don't need to be pandering to people and coddling them. We need to be giving them struggles to overcome, and that's why Dark Souls 1 is good. And Dark Souls 2 gives you more options and more flexibility, and therefore it ruins the experience. And that's exactly what the liberals want. They want to ruin our traditional hard masculine games by making them so easy so that like little girls can play them, and that's going to like ruin the games industry. That is legit. I'm not making that up. I'm not trying to be strawmanning or anything. That is legit some of the commentary I've seen about Dark Souls 2. It's fucking weird, and none of that applies here because the game is still really hard. It just encourages you to use a broader set of tools to solve a more like a different set of challenges. And so it's weird to me that those people don't see like problem solving and flexibility and like ingenuity and creativity as masculine virtues. That they're like, no, we all have to play the game using a sword and a shield and nothing else, and we can't use any other items to supplement our build or like circumvent challenges in different ways, because that would be like diverting away from the point of the challenge and the struggle. Like, it's a fucking video game. There's a story being told here. Like, doesn't have to be all about this like super serious meta narrative. But anyway, I kind of went off on a tangent there. It's just really weird to go look up a game you like and see a YouTube search that results list that is filled with why Dark Souls 2 sucks, Dark Souls 2 is awful, it's the worst thing. And then you pull up random videos and look in the comments of those videos, or usually it's in the comments more so the videos themselves, to be fair. But then you go through it and it's like, yeah, this is exactly what the woke mind virus mob wants with their DEI agenda. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? It's Dark Souls. Calm down. So I don't think that there's any kind of like any of that like modern political stuff is involved in this game. Certainly this game has political themes and messages, so to speak. I mean, it's literally like the 3 DLCs, the crowning achievement of the game, are discussing 3 like strong patriarchal male figures who tried desperately to cling to their desires via power primarily, and maybe less so in the case of Shalva, but like struggled and failed ultimately for various reasons. And so you could potentially look into that from a feminist perspective or a progressive perspective and be like, look, it's teaching us that men are bad. I really, really, really don't think that's the point. I think it's more an observation of like how desire and will are connected to like the cycle of life and the inevitability of decay, and how desire is wrapped up in all that. It's much less overtly political, although you could go out of your way to draw those connections if you wanted to. So it was just, honestly, it was like kind of exhausting to see something that I personally love both as a piece of art, personally as a consumer, but also deeply respect as a developer, and see it being like sucked into that, like, again, maelstrom or vortex of I don't know, weird takes in that regard as well. So to answer your question, like 20 minutes later, I do have a better appreciation for some of the technical problems with the game, and for some of the like brittleness and opaqueness with some of the more difficult aspects of certain areas, as well as the technical limitations of the game, particularly the lighting and the texture work and some stuff like that, some of the bugs. And asset reuse is something of an issue as well. I disagree with a lot of the other stuff. I think a lot of the critiques so far has been kind of myopic and misguided, and especially the ones that are trying to like weirdly warp Dark Souls 2 and turn it into some kind of modern political commentary 10 fucking years later. It's just really weird. Anyway, heads up. This scared the shit out of me the first time it happened, not gonna lie. Introducing the best character in the game. Hello, old friend.
Then accept the fate of your ilk and face the trials that await you. And yes, you have already joined the crestfallen. Young Hollow, there are but two paths. Inherit the order of this world, or destroy it. Only a true monarch can make such a choice. Very few indeed have come even this far. And yet your journey is far from over. Outgrown Hollow, have you what it takes? Truly. Young Hollow, seek after Drangleic. He who almost became a true monarch. The Drangleic is certain to guide your way. Fledgling Hollow, may we meet again?
So one of the criticisms, Saria, is that the story in this game, it's this weird like two-pronged criticism of, on the one hand, the story makes no sense and is like completely pointless and opaque, and on the other hand, it's like way too complicated, and Dark Souls doesn't need a complicated story. So granted, I'm being a little unfair to Matthew Matosis, who was one of the people who made the original kind of criticisms of Dark Souls 2 that blew up. Because this was before Scholar of the First Sin came out, and obviously, like, all the other character we just met is unique to Scholar. He wasn't in the first game. He was mentioned in the first game, but you can never, like, talk to him or whatever. And so, but what Matthew Matosis said is, like, in Dark Souls 1, you go through the process of a story where you inherit, like, a legacy from Oscar, and then you ring the bells of awakening, and then you go to Anor Londo, and you get the Lord Vessel, and etc., etc. He kind of describes what happens in pretty accurate, straightforward terms. And then he goes on to talk about Dark Souls 2, and he says, in Dark Souls 2, you fight a giant for some reason, and then you go and find a king for some reason after talking to the queen for some reason, and then you go to fight a dragon for some reason, and he gives you a heart thing for some reason, and then, like, an old skeleton lady shows up and fights you for some reason, right? Like, he just takes this approach of kind of dismissing the narrative of Dark Souls 2 by saying, like, there's no explanation for why any of this stuff is happening. When there is, you just have to kind of look pretty hard for it, and maybe harder than in Dark Souls 1, I suppose. But then along with that comes this narrative that, like, well, Dark Souls 1 didn't even really need a story, right? Go ring the bells, go slay the god. And I don't really get that. Like, regardless of whether or not it needed a story, there was a story there. It was pretty compelling, and there was a lot more going on in the lore as well than just the base narrative, so to speak. And then Dark Souls 2 decided, hey, we'd like to do Dark Souls, but with a more expanded story and a more nuanced story, something that doesn't just focus on, like, killing God, but also examines, like, but what's the philosophical meaning of killing God? You know, like, it tries to get a little deeper into it. And like, no, we don't need that. We didn't need that the first time. Why do we need it now? So it's weird because I don't really know how to respond to that. I don't really know how to encourage somebody who genuinely, like, doesn't care about a story to appreciate a game for its story. I guess you don't have to, right? Like, I can play a game like God of War that has a great combat system and skip all the cutscenes and turn the dialogue and the subtitles off and never know what the fuck is going on with Atreus and Kratos, and still have a great time because I'm playing the game for the combat. And that's fine. I could just say, like, I didn't care about the gods or anything like that. I just wanted to hit things, and it felt really good to hit things, and that's great. But then if you go out of your way to say that, like, the game is bad and people who like it are stupid and objectively wrong and, like, weak-minded or something, and especially if you go on to say that the developers are lazy and that they're, like, tarnishing and ruining and corrupting the legacy of the team that came before them, and then refer to them as, like, the B team at From Software, which just makes my blood boil, then I feel like, okay, if you're actually pointing yourself out to be, like, this objective critic who's trying to provide an objective assessment of the game as fairly as possible, Mahler, for example, then you have to talk about the fucking story, because the story is a big part of the game, whether or not you like it. Though, like, everything in the game is connected to a narrative, and your decision to just eschew any kind of investment in that, to just say, I don't care, believe it or not, I don't give a fuck, is not actually an objective critique of a work of art. Sorry. And as long as that continues to be part of the discourse, I feel the need to say something about it. But Aldia is a really interesting character. Getting towards the end of the stream, so I won't launch into a whole diatribe about him. I will say one little nice detail you might have noticed is that there are two voices that sometimes play. There seems to be a female recording as well as his primary male voice that are kind of overlapped and interleaved with one another, which is really cool. It's easier to hear if you listen back to a recording. There's some on YouTube. But there's a lot about his character I want to talk about next stream. Very, very interesting thematically, lore-wise, and also aesthetically. He's basically like a living bonfire. And it's really interesting to think about what that means over the course of the world. So, this is the end of the gameplay portion of the stream. I'm going to respond to comments and then talk about next, like, plans for the next stream and all that. So if you're just here for the gameplay, feel free to sign off at this point. But yeah, I'll get to comments and then we're going to wrap it up for the evening. So let's see. I'm sorry, I missed the comment from you, Konakun, before. You said when Kagami was dreaming about Konata and then woke up and said, I want to make delicious, tasty, and nutritious breakfast omelets with Konata. I'm assuming that's what those stars represent. I was on the floor laughing. Yes, there's nothing more hilarious, I agree, than a breakfast omelet that is both delicious and nutritious. I agree. Glad we're on the same page. Let's see. Konakun says, stop complaining and get good, Dark Souls players. Yeah. Well, I mean, there is definitely something to be said about when Dark Souls 1 first came out. It came out amidst an ecosystem of games that were, like, popular games, AAA games especially, that were trending more and more towards a very hand-holdy, very cinematic approach. Like, at the time, the games like Uncharted 2, for example, that were basically putting Hollywood into a controller, were the games that everybody was impressed by and really wanted to emulate within the industry. And then Dark Souls came along and said, yeah, that's cute. No. And just, like, went the completely opposite direction. And I remember my frustration with the game, my initial quitting of Demon Souls and like, hatred for that game, came entirely out of the fact that, like, the direction of Western games had been completely removing my ability to engage with games the way I used to. Like, I used to be able to play games that were much harder than Dark Souls, like Ninja Gaiden, for example. I think it's way harder than Dark Souls, and I was, like, decent at that. Devil May Cry back in the day, decent at that. Probably harder than Dark Souls. But because of the way that the difficulty of modern games was kind of pulling away and becoming more cinematic and more handholdy, not for any political reason, just to be, like, more broadly appealing to, like, more numbers, like, just raw numbers of people. Then Dark Souls came along and said, yeah, fine, you have fun with that, but we're going to keep doing our own thing. And it was such a breath of fresh air. And the difficulty was a part of that. And so, like, I am not necessarily thrilled about the idea of Dark Souls having an easy mode, per se. At least not an easy mode that just, like, is artificially inflating or reducing all of the enemy's attack damage or something like that across the board. There has to be a more organic, I guess, solution to that. Because if you just water down the game and make it super, super easy, then it does kind of change the experience of the game. And I'm very grateful and glad and think it was very important, then Dark Souls 1 was as difficult as it was. But that being said, like, so there is something to be said for, hey, play a game that is hard and then spend some time with it and see if there are ways for you to get around that challenge. Don't just give up, right? Western games at that time had kind of taught us that, like, there's one specific way to do things. You're either good or you're not. And you either have to do this specific thing, follow the trail, follow the instructions, or you failed. Dark Souls 1 was like, nah, you're not going to get away with that. You know, you're not quite good enough to just, like, run in and press the attack button over and over again. That's not going to do it for you. But try something else and see what happens, right? And so its silent player instruction was so important for getting through the mold. But I think a lot of people misinterpret that and think that it was just hard for difficulty's sake, and therefore any deviations away from that kind of difficulty is like some sort of a sin against the original game, which is just ridiculous. Anyway, not I shouldn't say ridiculous. I don't want to be too dismissive, right? Like, if you think Dark Souls 1 had the perfect level of difficulty and making it easier ruins the experience for you, that is okay. It is legitimate. You are allowed to feel that way. And I wouldn't say that anybody who laments all of the other games and only likes Dark Souls 1, that there's anything wrong with that person or there's anything wrong with that perspective. It's only when you then try to weaponize that perspective to discourage other people from playing the game or to, like, tarnish the reputation of the developers and stuff like that, that's when I start to get a bit more upset, because that seems unfair. Anyway, Saria says, aren't those the same people who personally get offended if you have a magic build? Yes, I do think there's some overlap with that part of the community, unfortunately. I will say, I think I've seen Mahler and Matthew Matosis at least do magic builds, but I don't... when it just so happens to be the case that when I am watching a Dark Souls critique, 99% of the time, hyperbole, but you know what I mean, when somebody is complaining about the game, and to be fair, maybe those complaints are legitimate. I'm not saying that to be dismissive, but when they are talking actively about something they don't like about the game and it is gameplay related, they are almost always playing a melee build with very, very few options. Very rarely do I see a video where somebody is talking about things they don't like about the game and then look at their build and say that they have a very flexible magic or spell mage, like spell blade, or faith-based build, or a co-op build, or like a whatchamacallit, like a consumables explorers build or something like that. Very, very rarely is that ever the case. Just happens to be the case. Konokun says, meanwhile, those little girls play better than those men. It's true. I mean, I've seen some of the most impressive feats of Dark Souls challenge runs I've seen from women. Like, I forget the name of the streamer, but I watched somebody beat Melania twice at the same time with, like, a DDR pad with her feet and a like Guitar Hero controller in her arms on, like, 2 separate computers at the same fucking time. It's insane. Like, the idea that there's any kind of, like, inherent gender difference in people that makes them predisposed to be better or worse at video games is just ludicrous. And same thing when it comes to game development. That's not the case. Like, some of the best developers I've ever worked with or content I've ever seen, games I've ever played, have been female across all disciplines. So I don't really see where that narrative could possibly be coming from. Oh, it was Park and Harbor. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that was crazy. That was a really impressive accomplishment there. Konokun says, go woke, go broke. Whoever said that should talk to Naruto. Naruto should give them a talk no jutsu. We need more talk no jutsu in the world. We need more empathy and understanding. We need more people who are willing to put themselves in the line of fire to have a discussion with somebody like that. Saria says, I love the voice effects so much here. It's so good. I can't think of the actual technical term, so I'm going to call it echo. Yeah, it's like, I'm not sure. I'd have to kind of break it down and figure it out, but there's his main voice, right? And then there is I think a second version of his main voice that is overlaid in and has like a filter effect, or like a phaser. So basically what it is they're taking the, like they're carving out a certain part of the frequency of what he's saying and kind of like sweeping that up and down, so that like I'm just gonna, you can't see it because I'm not on camera, but I'm gonna put my hand in front of my mouth while I'm talking, and I'm just gonna say like cat dog, like cat dog, wah wah wah, right? It's that wah 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 effect that you hear on a guitar wah wah pedal. That's why it's called a wah wah pedal, right? And basically all it's doing is you're changing the frequencies that are getting let through what's called a filter or something similar, and that creates this kind of like weird ethereal whooshing kind of effect. It's possible that they have like a delay on there as well, that's creating like the something that's vaguely akin to like a sound bouncing off of walls to kind of create a bit of a disorienting effect to it as well. And then of course you have the additional voice, like the female voice, that then gets blended in and is also kind of like phased or like liquefied by that same kind of like frequency shifting effect. I don't know if that came across on the mic at all, but I'll try and look into it. I should know like what they did with that effect, but I might be able to like recreate it in my audio editor. Let's see. Conquin says, I like when Vendrick said it's Vendrick all over the world. Yeah, he's been on a fucking Vendrick spree. Gave the whole kingdom a good Vendricking down. I want that version of Morbius to be released. Saria says, yeah, exactly. This is something I've seen a lot with speedrunners. Not all speedrunners, but a lot of them. They'll usually say a story is bad or make fun of people who like it, and that's so unfair. Yeah, I mean, like, if you genuinely love a game and you're just callously, like, grossly adverse to a huge part of that game, something doesn't line up. It's like, I don't know if you were there on the stream. It might have been a while ago, but... Oh, actually, no, sorry. I lost my train of thought. Yeah. Again, like, if you don't want to personally engage with it, that's totally fine. Like, you're allowed to like a piece of media and not like other pieces of it. You know, like, maybe you really like the action scenes in The Matrix, but you can't stand when they're just talking about, like, oh, this is your reality, Neo. You're a battery, Neo. Oh, how do you know if you're even breathing air right now, Neo? Shut the fuck up. Get back to the guns. I like the guns. The guns are really good. Like, that's fine. Like, you don't have to subscribe to everything else. But then if you go out of your way to say, like, this movie is absolutely terrible and awful, and the directors are lazy idiots, and then somebody asks you why, and you say, oh, because they keep getting in the way of all the guns. Like, there should be more guns and less talking. Then it's like, okay, well, you're not being fair, right? That's not the only thing in the movie. Maybe you should try to understand what the directors actually wanted to achieve. Maybe you should ask the question, well, why did they put those scenes in between all the gunfire? Or could the scenes be related to the gunfire? Could they tell you more about why the guns are getting shot in the first place? You know, like, maybe get something more out of it that way. Or not, but at least don't cast aspersions on the people who made those choices if you don't even understand why the choices were made, right? I think that seems fair. Let's see. Konakun says Blood Boiled, a sequel of Bloodborne. Yeah, it does. There are a couple of things I admit. Like, I always want to try to be fair and acknowledge the limitations of my own perspective and my own knowledge and my own biases. And so a lot of times I'm very hesitant to say, like, this thing is stupid or that person's lying or anything like that, because I don't want to assume intention, and I don't want to, make the same sort of mistakes that might irritate me when I listen to other critiques. And so I'm trying to find the balance, and I think maybe I will hopefully eventually find it over the course of our discussions, to being able to, like, call things out and say, like, no, this really isn't okay. We should really not be doing this, versus making sure that I'm leaving enough room for nuance and counter arguments and stuff like that. Not always sure where to draw a line in the sand. I tend to err on the side of, like, leaving other options open, because, like, what do I know, you know? My knowledge is very limited. But I'm pretty confident in saying that, like, there's this overarching narrative, or overarching trend, I guess, of people applying, like, treating a game studio as, like, a person, and then ascribing intent and character and personality and flaws or motivations and stuff to this weird, what's the term for it, like synecdoche, I can never remember, or metonymy, I can never remember the right literary term for it, but basically like treating the game studio as a metaphor for this like character that they are making up and ascribing all these things to, right? Like, oh, this game series was ruined because of women, and here's why. Because here's things I don't like about women, and then you go and look, and like the development staff is like mostly men, or vice versa, or this game was ruined because of Western politics, and then you go and look, and it's an entirely Eastern development company, right? They don't try to actually look behind the scenes at what's happening. They just kind of make an assumption and make a narrative about what's happening, and then let that kind of color their perspective of the whole game and the narrative surrounding the game. And I think basically if you're just like making shit up about other people, then that's like not cool, maybe a little bit. I think that's probably fair to say. Sorry, it says I can't remember the streamer. I want to say it was Small Ant. But like, and no shade to him, he was playing Celeste, but he would say the game doesn't teach, there's no story, but he'd skip the text. Yeah, yeah, I've been guilty of doing things like that in the past. Celeste is one of those things where I think there's so much momentum and flow to the way that the game, like it just feels so good to be on a streak and be like jumping off of platforms and dashing and having everything move in a natural way like that, that maybe you feel and you don't want to like stop that. You want to keep the momentum going. So I would understand why people would just want to, you know, press through the text. Like, okay, I'm not going to say it's objectively bad, but I will say that when you first get to the big open field, like Hyrule Field in Ocarina of Time, and the fucking Kepora Gebora shows up and gets right up in your face and like will not stop talking to you, and then like the "do you want me to repeat that" button is counterintuitively placed, and then you wind up having it going through it again and again and again. It's like, I don't think that was necessarily an intentional troll or anything, although it might have been. It would have been really funny, but that's definitely one of those things where it's like, okay, the developers are just fucking me with me, right? Like this is cruel. Please, the open field, it's right there. I'm so close. I just want to go on my little adventure. Please get the fuck out of my way, you fucking bird. So, yeah, talk about getting my blood boil. I have nightmares about that fucking bird. Anyway. So, Konako says, alright, sayonara, next time we meet, I will have PhD in Sailor Moon. Good luck with the exams. Good luck with it. Keep on doing the Lord's work. And thank you for stopping by, for checking in. I really do appreciate it. Hope things keep getting better for you. Yeah, the owl. Yeah. Alright, so I think that's going to do it for me for tonight. I think we made some good progress, had some good discussions. As always, Zarya and Kona and everybody else, it's been a pleasure to have this dialogue with you. Next time we'll be headed towards Drangleic Castle, which is really exciting. I definitely wanted to make sure that I got at least through there and through Amana. And then honestly, we're pretty close to the end of the game, so I think we'll probably be able to finish it in the next few streams. I'm not sure if I need to do the DLC, so probably what I'll do once I get to, especially since I'm less familiar and I'll probably die quite a bit, what I'll probably do is once we get through to Vendrick and Aldia's Keep and stuff like that, I'll post a poll and say, hey, by the time we get to the end of the game, do you guys want to keep doing this, or do you want to switch back to Elden Ring? And then based on that, we can kind of go from there, or potentially do Dark Souls 3 or whatever. But I think Elden Ring was the one we had already started. I know there's some people who are waiting for us to head back to Limgrave at some point. So thank you again for all the engagement and everything. Hope you guys have a great night, and take care.